Chapter 445. But at this moment, a disciple of the Extreme Fire Village suddenly pushed open the door with a panicked expression. Zhu Huarong couldn't help but scold, "What are you doing in such a panic? Besides, we are having a meeting now. Who let you in?" The disciple hurriedly said, "Master, Elder, it's not good. The people of the Bipolar Mountain Village are coming." Zhu Huarong and He Ho were taken aback for a moment, and then a hint of panic appeared on their faces. How could they come so fast? However, Zhu Huarong was the master of the village. Everyone could panic, but he couldn't. He waved his hand, "Let's go out and have a look." At this moment, thousands of disciples of the Bipolar Mountain Village had gathered at the gate of the Extreme Fire Village. They all had a murderous look. Zhu Huarong walked to the gate with a group of disciples. The moment he saw Xiao Jingwu, he shouted, "Xiao Jingwu! You allowed your disciples to kill my son. I haven't taken revenge on you yet, but you dare to make trouble for me." Xiao Jingwu was also a man of few words. He said fiercely, "Humph, cut the crap. There will be a battle between us sooner or later. Today, either you die or I die. Kill." With a command, he clapped his hands. Boundless Extreme Cold Spiritual Gang directly smashed the gate of the Extreme Fire Village. Thousands of disciples immediately swarmed up with red eyes. Zhu Huarong never thought that Xiao Jingwu would start a fight without saying anything. Was he really not afraid of a life and death struggle? Who gave him the confidence? However, he didn't have time to think about it, because Xiao Jingwu had already charged at him. At the same time, Hao Yushan also went to He Ho. As soon as the four gang spirit realm experts fought, the surrounding thousands of feet was filled with exploding gang spirit. No one dared to take a step closer. The rest of the people were kings against kings and generals against generals. The battle of thousands of people started. In an instant, the sound of killing shook the sky and blood flowed everywhere. Among them, the most intense battle was the battle between the Spirit Aperture Realm experts on both sides. The Bipolar Mountain Village had 13 Spirit Aperture Realm experts, which was 5 more than the Extreme Fire Village. Therefore, they had a great advantage as soon as they fought. However, the Spirit Aperture Realm was still the Spirit Aperture Realm. Even though the Extreme Fire Manor was at a great disadvantage, it wouldn't be easy to kill them in a short period of time. However, at this moment, 14 figures had silently arrived on the battlefield. The people from the Extreme Fire Manor were caught in a bitter battle and had no time to divert their attention. Thus, they didn't pay too much attention to them in the beginning. However, when the 14 people approached, they all erupted with powerful auras belonging to the Spirit Aperture Realm. Everyone from the Extreme Fire Manor turned pale with fright, but before they could react, more than 20 Spirit Aperture Realm experts erupted with all their strength and killed all 8 Spirit Aperture Realm experts from the Extreme Fire Manor. The 14 people who suddenly appeared were naturally Leng Shiqi and the others. However, Leng Shiqi didn't bring everyone. Moreover, he only brought people at the mid and late stage of the Spirit Aperture Realm, including Di Chuan, Dongfang Qi, and the others. As for the remaining people, they had all gone to another place. The appearance of Leng Shiqi and the others instantly changed the situation of the battle. The Spirit Aperture Realm experts of the Extreme Fire Manor were all dead. The remaining Spirit Pulse Realm and low-level disciples could only be slaughtered. Of course, the scene of them killing the 8 Spirit Aperture Realm experts with lightning speed was also witnessed by others. For the disciples of the Extreme Fire Manor, they were all horrified. Some of them even began to run for their lives. Zhu Huarong was both shocked and furious. His eyes were bloodshot. He never expected that the Extreme Fire Manor would invite more than 10 Spirit Aperture Realm experts. No wonder Xiao Jingwu was so confident. However, where did Xiao Jingwu find so many experts? Zhu Huarong couldn't understand. At this moment, he didn't want to think about it because he could see that the Extreme Fire Manor had already lost. Whether the 20 Spirit Aperture Realm experts went to kill the low-level disciples or to surround and kill him and He Ho, they were all destined to fail. Failure also meant death. The Extreme Fire Manor had been passed down for over 100 years. Hatefully, it was going to be destroyed in his hands today. Zhu Huarong's heart was filled with endless hatred. Right now, he only wanted to kill Xiao Jingwu. Ha! Zhu Huarong suddenly roared. A scarlet cloud of fire suddenly appeared in the sky, causing the temperature of the entire extreme fire manor to rise. Many low-level disciples were sweating profusely and almost couldn't breathe. Suddenly, a pillar of fire descended from the cloud of fire. Zhu Huarong was bathed in it. His body was rapidly growing. His black hair turned fiery red and danced in the wind. His aura was already infinitely close to the unity of heaven and man realm. This was the most profound secret technique of the extreme fire manor. It could allow Zhu Huarong's cultivation to increase explosively in a short period of time. However, the price was to burn his lifespan. In other words, he was squandering his life. Xiao Jingwu's expression was abnormally serious. Zhu Huarong's soaring killing intent was locked onto him. Zhu Huarong was going to fight with his life on the line, so he had to be careful. Moreover, Xiao Jingwu could also see that Zhu Huarong couldn't hold on for long in this state. He only needed to stall Zhu Huarong. Next, red and blue light intersected around Xiao Jingwu's body. The blazing flames and the cold frost intertwined, forming a mystical pattern. Two supreme power masters at the late stage of Gang's spirit realm were going all out. Seeing this, the spirit aperture realm disciples of the bipolar mountain village all wanted to help. Although there was a huge gap between their realms, they could still harass from the side as long as they worked together. However, Ling Shiqi said, both of them are ready to fight to the death. Once they start fighting, I'm afraid we'll be affected before we even get close to them. Moreover, there's no room for distraction in a fight between masters. If we rush forward rashly, not only will we be affected, but we'll also disturb Master Xiao. In addition, Zhu Huarong must have used some forbidden secret technique. As long as Master Xiao can stall him for a moment, Zhu Huarong will be defeated. We'd better get rid of the Spirit Aperture Realm disciples of the Extreme Fire Village as soon as possible. As long as they die, the foundation of the Extreme Fire Village will be completely destroyed. The people of the Bipolar Mountain Village thought for a while and felt that what Ling Shiqi said was reasonable. So, they all rushed to kill the other disciples of the Extreme Fire Village. Ling Shiqi smiled secretly. He didn't lie to anyone just now. He just avoided the important and dwell on the trivial. Zhu Huarong couldn't hold on for long, but his fighting capacity at this time was definitely much higher than Xiao Jingwu's. The most important thing was that the mentality of the two sides was different. Zhu Huarong was fighting with the determination to die, while Xiao Jingwu only wanted to stall. In this way, Xiao Jingwu was bound to lose. Of course, it was still very difficult for Zhu Huarong to kill Xiao Jingwu. After all, Xiao Jingwu was the head of a second-rate sect. He must have some life-saving trump cards. So, in the end, both sides would suffer great losses. At that time, it would be the turn of the Spirit Aperture Realm disciples to fight. Chapter 446. The following battle was simple. A group of spiritual Aperture Realm experts charged into the spiritual Pulse Realm. It was like a tiger charging into a flock of sheep. As for the low-level disciples of Extreme Fire Village who were below the four realms of celestial being, they were all scared out of their wits and retreated in defeat. Meanwhile, the people of Bipolar Mountain Village went crazy. Both sides had accumulated grievances for a long time and hated each other to the core. Especially when Extreme Fire Village won the Extreme Cold Spirit Pool 3 times in a row, the disciples of Bipolar Mountain Village were furious. At this moment, they turned all their hatred and resentment into fighting strength. The more they fought, the fiercer they became. In just a moment, nearly half of the disciples of Extreme Fire Village were killed. Seeing this, Zhu Huarong became even crazier. He completely ignored his own defense and attacked Xiao Jingwu like a madman. Xiao Jingwu never fought with him head-on. He always blocked if he could and dodged if he couldn't. However, in Ling Shiqi's view, Xiao Jingwu was already struggling. If he didn't use some trump cards, he would probably be injured. Zhu Huarong suddenly pulled at the void with his hands. In an instant, he seemed to have torn the space apart. An irregular portal appeared in front of him. That portal faintly revealed a heart-palpitating power. He-Ho's expression suddenly changed. He seemed to have thought of something and shouted with grief and indignation, "Village Lord!" Xiao Jingwu was shrouded by the terrifying aura. His heart jumped. He didn't dare to hide his strength anymore. A saber and a sword appeared in his hands. The power of ice and fire surged around him. The two opposite attributes combined and twisted the universe. A trace of blood flowed out of Zhu Huarong's mouth inexplicably, but he also sneered. He roared. Immediately, a strange monster rushed out of the irregular portal. The monster was more than 10 feet tall and was red all over. There was a pair of huge ferocious arms on its back. The monster's body shook slightly. Endless flames spread out and filled the entire extreme fire village. Judging from the aura, this monster was comparable to a 6th-rank demonic beast. It was comparable to the existence of unity of heaven and man. While Leng Shiqi was forced back by the flames, he was secretly glad that he didn't fight Zhu Huarong head-on. Although they were all in Gang's spirit realm, Ji1 and Zhu Huarong couldn't compare at all. If Leng Shiqi were to fight with Zhu Huarong, he would probably be thinking about how to escape within a few moves. As soon as the monster appeared, Zhu Huarong's aura began to rapidly wither. Obviously, he had paid a great price to summon this monster. Then, Zhu Huarong made a hand seal, and the monster stared at Xiao Jingwu with its red eyes. At this time, Xiao Jingwu was holding a sword and a blade in his hand. The red and blue lights on his body were intertwined. He held his breath and didn't dare to be careless. Under Zhu Huarong's control, the monster opened its 4 arms, and flames soared into the sky. Even the world seemed to tremble. The monster charged towards Xiao Jingwu with a wave of fire. Xiao Jingwu's face also turned red, and he started to burn his qi and blood to resist. However, to everyone's surprise, the monster suddenly turned around halfway and attacked Hao Yushan. Since the beginning of the battle, Hao Yushan had been fighting with He-Ho. However, the two of them were not as fierce as Zhu Huarong. They were both in the middle stage of Gang's spirit realm, and their strength was well matched. The two of them also knew that they couldn't do anything to each other. Although He-Ho wanted to get rid of Hao Yushan, he had no way to do so. Hao Yushan, on the other hand, was delaying He-Ho with a smile. He also saw that his disciples had killed more than half of the people from Extreme Fire Manor. It wouldn't be long before Extreme Fire Manor was wiped out from Donglin County. But suddenly, the monster summoned by Zhu Huarong rushed at him, which made Hao Yushan turn pale with fright. The monster's strength was comparable to a rank 6 demonic beast. How could Hao Yushan resist it? What was more, he had no time to make any preparations in a hurry. At this time, He-Ho suddenly took action. He swept his 2 swords, and the blazing sword gang came out, blocking all of Hao Yushan's retreat. Hao Yushan was suddenly filled with despair, but before he could use his trump card, he heard an earth-shattering sound. Then a burst of monstrous flames swept in all directions, making more than half of the whole Jihuashan village collapse in an instant. Leng Shiqi opened his supercilious eyes and looked at the center of the battle, where Hao Yushan's spiritual aura had disappeared. This also meant that Hao Yushan, the deputy chief of Bipolar Mountain Village and a master of Gang's spirit realm, had died. Zhu Huarong's situation was also very bad. At this moment, the spiritual energy and qi and blood in his body were almost exhausted. But he laughed loudly, ha ha ha. Xiao Jingwu, even if you can destroy Jihuashan village, so what? Before I die, I also take someone down with me. It's worth it, worth it. It turned out that Zhu Huarong knew that even if he used all his trump cards, he might not be able to kill Xiao Jingwu, so he targeted Hao Yushan from the beginning. The destruction of Jihuashan village was irreversible. Before he died, he could take Hao Yushan down with him, which could be regarded as breaking one of the front teeth of Bipolar Mountain Village. Xiao Jingwu was not injured at all, but his face was extremely pale. Today's matter was in the bag, but unexpectedly, Zhu Huarong risked his life to kill Hao Yushan. Hao Yushan was not only a master of Gang's spirit realm, but also the think tank of Bipolar Mountain Village, Xiao Jingwu's right-hand man, and his best friend. Just when he was so angry that he wanted to kill Zhu Huarong, Ling Shiqi's voice came, "Chief Xiao, Zhu Huarong is stalling you. He Ho has run away." After this reminder, Xiao Jingwu found that He Ho, the first elder of Jihuashan village, had disappeared. He Ho was a master of Gang's spirit realm. He must not be allowed to escape, or there would be endless troubles. If a master of Gang's spirit realm who bore the pain of the destruction of his family really escaped, he would become a viper hiding in the dark all the time in the future. As long as the disciples of Bipolar Mountain Village dared to show up, they might be attacked by He Ho. But it was impossible for Bipolar Mountain Village to hide in the village forever, so He Ho could not be left alive. Xiao Jingwu waved his sword and saber, chopping out 2 dazzling ice and fire spiritual gang, 1 red and 1 blue, to kill Zhu Huarong. Immediately, he chased after He Ho without looking at him. Zhu Huarong had been exhausted and had no strength to resist at all. In the twinkling of an eye, he was annihilated by the ice and fire spiritual gang, and died without an intact body. Everyone thought that Zhu Huarong had died, and the disciples of Jihuashan village had lost their fighting spirit, leaving only the road of being slaughtered. But Ling Shiqi's eyes flashed. He looked around and finally looked at a direction below. He slightly raised the corner of his mouth and murmured, Zhu Huarong, you deserve to be the head of Jihuashan village. You even have such a method of faking your death. Unfortunately, you met me." Chapter 447. In the depths of the extreme volcano manor, there was a secret room. It was originally covered in formations and restrictions, but a part of it was damaged by the battle above. At this moment, a figure staggered into the secret room. His skin was lacerated, and there wasn't a single place that was intact. The blood that flowed out had also congealed into blood spots. He was the master of the extreme volcano manor, Zhu Huarong. Everyone thought that he had been killed by Xiao Jingwu, but he had strangely appeared here. Zhu Huarong dragged his heavily injured and broken body into the secret room. He formed seals with his hands to undo the restrictions and barriers. Finally, he arrived in front of a large door. However, this door was on the ground. In other words, this door led underground. Zhu Huarong immediately took out a flame-shaped token and imprinted it on the door. The door immediately trembled and opened a crack. Immediately after, a red light shot out from the crack and illuminated the entire secret room. Zhu Huarong's face also showed a bit of confusion. His expression immediately became hesitant, but in the end, he seemed to have made a decision and pulled the door open with all his might. Blazing flames spread out. Zhu Huarong took a deep breath and jumped in. After he jumped in, Ling Shiqi's figure quietly appeared. He focused his gaze and looked down. He discovered that there was a sea of fire under the door. To be more precise, it was a sea of lava. At this moment, Ling Shiqi remembered that the extreme volcano manor was located on top of an extinct volcano. Could this be the depths of that volcano? Then why did Zhu Huarong not choose to escape after faking his death and instead came here? Ling Shiqi's eyes lit up. There must be something more precious than Zhu Huarong's life down there. He couldn't help but rub his chin. Then, his body lit up with spirit armor and he also jumped down. After jumping down, Ling Shiqi first found a rock to stand on. The only thing he felt was heat. One had to know that Ling Shiqi was at the middle stage of the spirit aperture realm. He was already immune to cold and heat. Even with the protection of his spiritual armor, he still felt the heat. One could imagine how high the temperature of the surrounding lava was. Ling Shiqi moved his spiritual power and cold air gushed out. However, the cold air evaporated as soon as it appeared, but it made him feel better. He rolled his eyes and quickly found Zhu Huarong's position. Then, he followed her. The deeper Zhu Huarong went, the higher the temperature became. Even the air was distorted by the heat. However, he seemed to have some kind of secret technique that allowed him to remain unaffected by the temperature. About a quarter of an hour later, Zhu Huarong arrived at a small high platform. The platform was ice blue in color. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the entire platform was made of ice jade. A palm-sized golden flame floated at the top of the platform. In this extremely hot environment, this kind of ice jade was still intact. Clearly, this ice jade was a rare treasure. Zhu Huarong secretly let out a sigh of relief when he arrived. He stared at the golden flames in infatuation and murmured, "Crimson gold earth dragon flames, only you can save me now. Only you can save the extreme fire manor." Leng Shiqi, who was following behind him, heard this and was shocked. He remembered that he had seen the name, Pure Gold Earth Dragon Flame, in an ancient book from 10,000 years ago in the illusory spirit's secret realm. It was said that this world would give birth to some heavenly variants. The conditions for these heavenly variants to appear were extremely harsh, but once they were born, they would contain a portion of the world's power. Different types of heavenly variants would contain different amounts of world's power. They could be roughly divided into the 5 elements, 3 talents, yin and yang. Moreover, even if they were of the same type, different types of heavenly variants would be born in different environments. For example, the ice type included zero ice, hell ice, and so on. The pure gold earth dragon flame was one of the fire-type heavenly variants. It was said that this strange flame could only be born in the depths of a volcano. However, the probability of this happening was extremely small. It had never appeared in the past 10,000 years. Who would have thought that the pure gold earth dragon flame would be born in the extinct volcano under the extreme fire manor? Leng Shiqi also recalled that the pure gold earth dragon flame naturally had a great restraining effect on evil spirits. It could be said that the moment the pure gold earth dragon flame appeared, all evil spirits would be forced to retreat. He also suddenly realized that Nine Leaf had said that there was a treasure in the extreme fire manor. Could it be that he was referring to the pure gold earth dragon flame? The more Leng Shiqi thought about it, the more likely it was. Nine Leaf had said that she couldn't even get close. It seemed that the pure gold earth dragon flame had some restraining effect on demonic beasts like Nine Leaf. He couldn't help but think, I really didn't expect a second-rate sect like the Extreme Fire Manor to hide such a treasure. If outsiders knew, the Extreme Fire Manor would have been destroyed long ago. I originally thought that Zhu Huarong had hidden some cultivation resources here. Now I've run into a heavenly variant. It seems that I'm really lucky. Zhu Huarong walked into the pure gold earth dragon flame with a complicated expression. The bipolar mountain village had invited so many experts from somewhere. Now the destruction of the extreme fire manor had become a foregone conclusion. His heart was full of hatred, but he knew that it was impossible for him to take revenge alone with his cultivation at the late stage of Gang's spirit realm. Therefore, he didn't run away after faking his death. Instead, he chose to collect the pure gold earth dragon flame. Only by collecting the pure gold earth dragon flame could he break through to the realm of oneness of heaven and men with the help of the power of heaven and earth in it. Only then would he have the qualification, strength, and opportunity to take revenge. But how could the pure gold earth dragon flame be collected so easily? Actually, this item had already been discovered when the Extreme Fire Manor was founded. It was precisely because this volcano had produced the crimson gold earth dragon flame that it had absorbed all of its energy and became an extinct volcano. Therefore, although the pure gold earth dragon flame was only the size of a palm, the power it contained was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. For hundreds of years, the Extreme Fire Manor had been secretly studying how to collect the flame. However, they didn't succeed even though they had spent countless resources and a large number of genius disciples had died. Zhu Huarong had also been making preparations. Without perfect preparation, he wouldn't dare to collect the pure gold earth dragon flame rashly. But now, he couldn't hesitate anymore. He had to give it a try at the risk of his life. Then, Zhu Huarong took out a large number of materials from his mustard bracelet. More than 80% of them were ice-class materials. He used these materials to set up a simple formation around the pure gold earth dragon flame. Suddenly, the area within a radius of several feet became as cold as a 10,000-year-old ice cave. The pure gold earth dragon flame seemed to have dimmed a little. Zhu Huarong's face showed a hint of joy. But soon, his expression froze, because a saber light inexplicably appeared in front of him. Chapter 448. Leng Shiqi held the devil's arrival saber, which was dripping with blood. It was the blood of a master in Gang's spirit realm, the owner of Extreme Volcano Manor, Zhu Huarong. Zhu Huarong was already at the end of his strength, and he forcibly set up the formation, which made him almost unable to fight. However, Leng Shiqi still dared not to be careless. He directly used Divine Ephemeral Bloom to kill Zhu Huarong with all his strength. And in order to make sure that Zhu Huarong did not fake his death, Leng Shiqi specially waited until he absorbed the power of Zhu Huarong's remnant soul. Then he did not dare to delay for a moment. He had to collect the red gold earth dragon flame before the formation completely collapsed. Of course, he did not know how to collect the red gold earth dragon flame, nor did he intend to collect it seriously. Leng Shiqi was instantly covered with a set of ferocious black armor, and then the armor emitted colorful streamers. Gu King armor. After preparing these, Leng Shiqi directly reached out to grab the red gold earth dragon flame. However, as soon as he approached, the streamers on his palm twisted and collapsed. When he got closer, the demon beast blood pattern armor began to melt. Leng Shiqi immediately changed his face and hurriedly stopped. He furrowed his brows as his thoughts raced. He looked down at the demon beast blood pattern armor and the colorful scale armor of Gu King armor on his body, and suddenly patted his head. The red gold earth dragon flame is supposed to suppress the power of these demons. How could I use these special means? Then, he immediately removed the two spiritual armors, and his body flashed with golden Buddha light. At the same time, streaks of silver holy power condensed into a cloak behind him. These were the beast spirit battle patterns of the flower-pinching posture and the holy silver deer. The energy emitted by the two was also the power to suppress demons. After all, it was somewhat similar to the red gold earth dragon flame. This time, Leng Shiqi approached the red gold earth dragon flame again, and it was much easier than before. However, the extreme power of the crimson gold earth dragon flame was still too much for Leng Shiqi to handle. He made up his mind and ignored the palm, directly touching the crimson gold earth dragon flame. At that moment, Leng Shiqi felt an extreme pain coming from his palm. This was the most heart-wrenching pain he had ever felt in his life. He couldn't help but cry out in pain. However, he was still very calm in his heart. At that moment, with a single thought, the crimson gold earth dragon flame disappeared into thin air. Following which, Leng Shiqi looked at the crimson gold earth dragon flame sitting quietly in his bag, a smile appearing on his face. He raised his left hand shakily, only to find that his palm had been badly mutilated and charred black. His eyes could not help but be slightly shocked. His body was not weak, and just the strength of his body was comparable to a spirit pulse realm cultivator. However, his body was almost melted the moment it came into contact with the crimson gold earth dragon flame. This was under the suppression of the array, as well as the assimilation of the Buddhist light and holy power. Under normal circumstances, Leng Shiqi's entire body would have melted. The crimson gold earth dragon flame was actually so terrifying. However, the stronger it was, the happier Leng Shiqi was because the crimson gold earth dragon flame was already his. Although he could not refine the crimson gold earth dragon flame yet, he had a lot of time to study it in the future. Sooner or later, he would be able to refine it. With the crimson gold earth dragon flame, Leng Shiqi did not care about the other cultivation resources of the extreme fire manor anymore. Of course, he would still take what he needed. After treating his wounds, Leng Shiqi picked up Zhu Huarong's storage bracelet and returned to the ground. At this time, the battle was already over. Other than a few disciples who escaped, everyone else from the extreme fire manor had died here. The bipolar stronghold also sent out a large number of people to hunt down the people who escaped. Everyone knew that the wildfire could not burn away the wildfire. After Leng Shiqi met up with a dozen other elites from the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guard, they went straight to the Extreme Fire Manor's treasure vault. They took out mustard seed bag after mustard seed bag and kept taking out the cultivation resources in the treasure vault. Although this place had been destroyed by Nine Leave once, the Extreme Fire Manor was still a second-rate sect that had been passed down for hundreds of years. Its foundation was not bad. Just the remaining resources were enough to make countless people jealous. Many disciples of the bipolar stronghold watched with red eyes as they took out the resources. They even secretly swallowed their saliva. Meanwhile, Ling Shiqi and the others were naturally overjoyed. Now that the Extreme Fire Manor had been destroyed, their mission could be considered complete. They had even earned so many resources for free. Even if they were to split them evenly in the end, it would still be a considerable amount of wealth. Right now, the only person that Ling Shiqi was a little worried about was He-Ho. As long as He-Ho was alive, the Extreme Fire Manor could still rise from the ashes. Fortunately, Xiao Jingwu came back not long later. He came back with He-Ho's head. Ling Shiqi also looked at Xiao Jingwu a few more times. Although Xiao Jingwu's cultivation was a few levels higher than He-Ho's, being able to successfully kill him meant that Xiao Jingwu's true strength was also very strong. Xiao Jingwu looked at the ruined Extreme Fire Manor and laughed loudly. He had fought with Zhu Huarong for decades, and in the end, he still won. Ling Shiqi stepped forward and cupped his hands. Congratulations, Master Xiao. From now on, the bipolar stronghold's glory is just around the corner. Ha ha ha, this is all thanks to Lord Lu. Tonight, we must drink until we are drunk. This one appreciates Master Zhao's good intentions, Ling Shiqi tactfully declined. Unfortunately, this one still has official business to attend to, so it is inconvenient for me to disturb you. Xiao Jingwu was in high spirits, so he didn't mind. Ling Shiqi casually exchanged a few pleasantries with him before leaving. However, Xiao Jingwu didn't see that when Ling Shiqi left, he had a sinister smile on his face. On the other side, when the bipolar stronghold broke through the Extreme Fire Manor, 9 figures suddenly appeared in the stronghold. These people included Delta Origi and Lian Yi. Most of them were at the early stage of the Spirit Aperture realm, so Ling Shiqi didn't let them participate in the direct battle. Instead, they secretly came here. The bipolar stronghold could be said to have sent out all of their forces to attack the Extreme Fire Manor. Right now, the entire stronghold only had a few low-level disciples and a handful of Sky Realm experts left. Lian Yi smiled and said, Brother Lu's appetite is quite big. Not only do you want to swallow the resources of the Extreme Fire Manor, you even want to take everything from the bipolar stronghold. Unfortunately, we didn't participate in the direct battle, so I'm afraid we won't be able to get much merit. Delta Origi glanced at her and said, getting the resources of the bipolar stronghold will naturally be a great merit. However, there will definitely be formations in the treasury. This will be a bit troublesome. At this moment, a person walked out from the crowd. It was a middle-aged man with 2 long strands of beard. He stroked his beard and said, this one's knowledge is shallow, but I do know a thing or two about formations. I can't say that I can break through all of the formations in the treasury, but I'm confident in breaking through half of them. Chapter 449. One day later, Xiao Jingwu returned to the bipolar mountain village with his men after dealing with everything in the Jihuo village. However, when he returned to the sect, he found something very strange. The disciples in the 4 realms of celestial being who stayed here didn't show up. They were specially left to guard the sect's treasure house. Now they didn't show up, which made Xiao Jingwu uneasy. He hurried to the treasure house with his men. When he opened the door of the treasure house, he was stunned instantly. As the leader of a second-class sect and a master in the late stage of Gang's spirit realm, Xiao Jingwu showed such an expression. He didn't even lose his composure when facing Zhu Huarong, who was fighting desperately. Because at this moment, almost half of the formation and inhibition in the treasure house had been destroyed. There were several corpses lying on the ground, which were the corpses of the disciples who stayed in the treasure house. However, the treasury was already empty. Such a huge treasury had actually been emptied. Xiao Jingwu felt as if there was a thunderbolt in his mind, which made him a little confused for a while. The elders and disciples behind him were all dumbfounded. They couldn't believe what they saw. This instantly extinguished their joy of wiping out the Jihuo village. Crack, crack, crack. Xiao Jingwu clenched his fists, making cracking sounds. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He gnashed his teeth and said, "Who is it? Who is it?" Although he wiped out the Jihuo village, Hao Yushan died, and he didn't get any resources from the Jihuo village. It could be said that although he won this battle, what he won was only the potential for development and the future. He didn't get too many substantial resources. Now, his property had been emptied by someone secretly. He couldn't even pay the monthly salary of his disciples. It was conceivable that there would be hostility within the sect for a period of time. This was not the point. The most important thing was that it might take him 10 or more years to accumulate so many resources again. This meant that the bipolar mountain village had regressed for more than 10 years. Now, his bipolar stronghold only had a large territory, but couldn't even take out a single bit of resources. If this matter was known by other sects, they would definitely have other thoughts. At that time, they would fight for territory and business. In the end, the bipolar mountain fort was actually not as powerful as before they destroyed the extreme fire manor. Xiao Jingwu was filled with hatred and anger, but he didn't even know who he should hate. He could only rage helplessly. Investigate. Go and investigate. We must find out who did it. The culprits of this matter, Ling Shiqi and the others, had already gathered in Shining City. They were gathered in a dilapidated house. There were a total of 23 mustard seed bags on the table in the middle, which contained all kinds of resources from the extreme fire manor and the bipolar stronghold. Everyone's breathing was a little hurried and heavy. Anyone who saw so many resources would be moved. From time to time, everyone would look at one person, and that was Ling Shiqi. This time, not only did they successfully complete the mission, but they also obtained countless resources and wealth. And all of this was brought to them by Ling Shiqi. At the beginning of the mission, Ling Shiqi used the conflict between Zhu Lin and Wan Xiaoyuan to incite a war between the two sides. Then, he killed the experts of both sides. Then, he persuaded Xiao Jingwu to attack the extreme fire manor. He really displayed his scheming and strength to the fullest. More than 90% of the people present were sincerely convinced by him. So before Ling Shiqi said anything, they wouldn't rashly touch these resources. Ling Shiqi casually weighed the mustard seed bags. Among all the resources he had seen, this was the most abundant one except for the Gu God sect. He was also very tempted. These resources have been evenly distributed. There are a total of 23 mustard seed bags, one for each of you. However, everyone's needs may be different, so you can exchange with each other later. While speaking, Ling Shiqi casually picked up one of the mustard seed bags and stood to the side. The others looked at each other with a bit of astonishment in their eyes. They originally thought that Ling Shiqi would definitely monopolize the majority. After all, Ling Shiqi played a huge role and they were all mentally prepared. But Ling Shiqi was willing to share the resources with everyone equally. This was all the wealth of a half-second-rate sect, and he was actually willing to give up most of it. Unconsciously, everyone felt some respect for him in their hearts. In the end, they didn't have much to do with Ling Shiqi. After this mission, some of them would be eliminated and returned to their own provinces. Even if Dongfang Qi, Di Chuan, and the others could pass the test, they would disperse after the elite meeting. It was very likely that they would never see each other again in this life. So they felt that Ling Shiqi didn't need to rope them in now. Ling Shiqi was willing to share so many resources with them. It was completely righteous of him. Di Chuan was the first to cup his hands and say, "Brother Lu, your strength and ability were stronger than mine before, but to be honest, I was still a little unconvinced. But now, I, Di Chuan, am truly convinced by Brother Lu. If you need me in the future, just let me know." Ling Shiqi chuckled and said, "Brother Di, you're too polite." After that, he picked up a mustard seed bag from the table and personally handed it to Di Chuan. After that, everyone said a few words before taking the mustard seed bag. It was unknown how many of these people were sincere and how many of them were faking it, but at this moment, Ling Shiqi's reputation was unprecedented. Among everyone, only Delta Origi could roughly guess Ling Shiqi's thoughts. Delta Origi could be said to know Ling Shiqi very well. He was definitely a guy who wouldn't act without benefits. How could he give away wealth so easily? She guessed that the reason why Ling Shiqi did this was actually to establish good karma. Some of the reasons might be because of the Blood Seed project, because she also understood that if the Blood Garment Pavilion wanted to make a comeback in the future, it would inevitably attract the attention of countless sections. When that time came, the people present might also be in high positions and could more or less provide some help. Even if they couldn't help, with this favor, they wouldn't hit them when they were down. Giving these people 10% of the benefits before they really rose up was far more useful than giving them 100% of the benefits after they became famous. Ling Shiqi secretly glanced at Delta Origi, knowing that she must be guessing his thoughts. However, Delta Origi was only half right. In addition, Ling Shiqi intended to completely convince these people to trust him and prepare for the next mission. Although in the past, the elite meeting only had one round of test, this time was completely different. Moreover, Ling Shiqi also had a hunch that there might be follow-up missions this time. Chapter 450. The news that Jiwashan village, a second-rate sect, was destroyed soon became the most explosive topic in the whole Donglin County. In Donglin County, there was almost no sect being destroyed in the past few decades. However, after Feng Sha Mo came to Donglin County, there seemed to be a strange prelude. 2 third-rate sects, including Golden Wing Academy, were destroyed one after another. Later, the collapse of the Phantom Spirit's secret land led to the tragic death of many spiritual Pulse Realm cultivators. Donglin County was in turmoil, and several third-rate forces disappeared from the world. However, until now, there had never been a case of a second-rate sect being annihilated. Jiwashan village became the first second-rate sect to be destroyed in Donglin County in decades. The bipolar mountain village, which destroyed Jiwashan village, did not act in a high-profile manner after the event. Instead, they kept a low profile, which was very strange. When the news reached the ears of Wu Diao and Zhuge Puha, the other 2 leaders of the task, they were both shocked. The task of the 2 men was to destroy the Great Righteousness sect and the Salt Gang, respectively, and they also gained something. However, the biggest problem in front of them was how to deal with the masters of Gang's spirit realm. And how to ensure that all the low-level disciples were killed. Both Wu Diao and Zhuge Puha could completely crush the disciples of Gang's spirit realm and Gang's spirit realm in the Great Righteousness sect and the Salt Gang. However, it was difficult for them to kill the masters of Gang's spirit realm. Even if they joined hands to kill the masters of Gang's spirit realm, they could win, but it was almost impossible to kill them. Moreover, every second-rate sect had a large number of low-level disciples. Those people were not pigs. They would not stand there and be killed. Some of them would definitely run away. If these 2 problems could not be solved, they would never be able to complete the task. When they were all badly battered by this matter, the news that Bipolar Mountain Village attacked Jiwashan village came. When they heard this, their first thought was that it was so fast. Ling Shiqi and others completed the task too fast. It had only been more than a month. That was to say, it only took him half of the time to destroy Jiwashan village. At the same time, Wu Diao and Zhuge Puha also guessed that Ling Shiqi had cleverly borrowed the power of the Bipolar Mountain stronghold to complete the mission. Wu Diao clicked his tongue and exclaimed, "Wonderful, wonderful. What a good plan to kill with a borrowed knife, driving the tiger to swallow the wolf. I really want to know how Lu Xingji did it." The person next to him said, "Brother Wu, is that Lu Xingji breaking the rules by borrowing the power of the Bipolar Mountain stronghold? Now it seems that although he has completed the mission, it doesn't necessarily count." "No." Wu Diao shook his head and said, "The rules don't allow us to use the forces behind us, and Lu Xingji came all the way from the Western Desolate Province. It's impossible for him to have anything to do with the bipolar stronghold. Moreover, they only said that we can't rely on our own backgrounds, but they didn't say that we can't work together. Lu Xingji's actions gave me an idea. Go and call everyone over. I have something important to discuss with them. Okay, Brother Wu. On the other side, Zhuge Puha did the same thing. And in the governor's mansion of Donglin town, Lei Mayan and eunuch Gao also got the information about this matter. At this moment, there was a third person in the hall of the governor's mansion. This person was the steward of the Wind Towers branch in Donglin town, shopkeeper Jing. In fact, the information Lei Mayan and eunuch Gao got was not only about the destruction of the extreme volcano village, but also described in detail how Ling Shiqi started from the conflict between Zhu Lin and Wan Xiaoyuan, and gradually expanded the grudge between the two sides. In the end, it led the bipolar mountain stronghold to attack the extreme volcano village with all their strength. Even Ling Shiqi's direct killing of Ji Wen was clearly recorded. The information described in this information was 90% the same as what Ling Shiqi had experienced. The only thing not recorded in the information was Zhu Huarong's fake death and Ling Shiqi's secret acquisition of the red gold earth dragon flame. From this, it could be seen that the Wind Tower's ability to gather information was appalling. Lei Mayan put down the information, sighed softly, and said, he was able to kill the early stage of the Gang Spirit Realm at the middle stage of the Spirit Aperture Realm, and he destroyed the extreme volcano village in just over a month. This Lu Xingji is really a talent with endless potential. The Dark Thunder Guards have picked up a good seedling. Eunuch Gao, who had always been cold and serious, also raised a few smiles. This boy is really good, but he still needs more training. Eunuch Gao is still so strict. So, which people in this group do you think can enter the next round? Lei Mayan asked with a smile. Eunuch Gao did not answer directly, but looked through the information again. Lei Mayan was not in a hurry, so she waited calmly. After a while, Eunuch Gao said, I have 7 candidates in mind. Princess, why don't you take a guess? Hearing this, Lei Mayan suddenly raised her eyebrows. This zombie-faced Eunuch Gao was joking with her? This was really strange. It seemed that he was really in a good mood. She rolled her eyes and smiled charmingly. What a coincidence, I also have 7 candidates here. Why don't we write down the names of these 7 people and see if they are the same? Bring a pen and paper. Soon after, the two each took a piece of paper and exchanged it. When they saw the names written by each other, they looked at each other and smiled. Lei Mayan covered her mouth and smiled. Sure enough, great minds think alike. Just as they were talking, Donglin City's lord, Feng Luan, walked in. He first bowed and said, Sirs, Lu Xingji and the others have returned. They came back quite quickly. Call them in according to the names on this list. As for the others, you can go back. Lei Mayan picked up the paper and said. Feng Luan took it with both hands, then bowed and left. There were 23 people standing outside the hall, with Ling Shiqi leading the group. Feng Luan immediately said, You are the first to complete the mission. First, I have to congratulate you. But you also know that completing the mission does not mean you can pass the test. Speaking of this, most of the people in the crowd held their breath. If they passed this time, they would definitely have a meteoric rise in the future. If they failed, they could only go back home. Feng Luan took out the paper, and everyone's eyes were immediately attracted. He coughed and said, Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi stepped forward and cupped his fists. Thank you, Lord. Don't thank me. You fought for it yourself. The 2 sirs are waiting inside. You can go in first. Feng Luan looked at Ling Shiqi with appreciation. Everyone took it for granted that Ling Shiqi could pass the test. No one had any complaints. Feng Luan continued to read the names, Di Chuan, Dongfang Qi, Bu Yangqiu, He Gaoi, Yin Xiefeng and Blood Moon. Chapter 451. Other than Ling Shiqi and Delta Origi, the rest of the 7 people that Feng Luan pointed out were all in the late stage of the Spirit Aperture Realm. They naturally had no complaints about Ling Shiqi, but Delta Origi, who was only in the early stage of the Spirit Aperture Realm, could also pass the test, which made them feel a little unfair. Although she had killed 2 early-stage Spirit Aperture Realm opponents, which proved that she was not weak. But in the end, she was still in the early stage of the Spirit Aperture Realm, and did not have a decisive performance in the entire mission. Why did she pass? The others felt unfair, but no one jumped out to question Feng Luan, because none of them were idiots. They knew that the decision was not made by Feng Luan, but by Eunuch Gao and Lei Mayan. Since the two had made such a decision, of course, it was impossible to change it. And none of them dared to argue with Eunuch Gao or Lei Mayan, unless they were crazy. Ling Shiqi roughly knew why Delta Origi was selected. Although everyone's mission was to destroy the extreme volcano village, taking all the resources of the bipolar mountain village was not a small contribution. Because of this, the bipolar mountain village was basically crippled. For a short period of time, they could only seek self-preservation, and could not come out to cause trouble. This time, the elites would be placed in Donglin County, and they even made a move against the spirit cultivator sections. This was a signal. It was a signal that the Thunderblaze dynasty wanted to completely control Donglin County in their hands. Anything that could suppress the spirit cultivator forces in Donglin County could be regarded as a contribution. And the matter of seizing the resources of the bipolar mountain village was led by Delta Origi, which was why she passed the test. Then, Ling Shiqi, Delta Origi, and the rest of the 7 people stepped into the hall and saluted. Greetings to Manager Gao, greetings to Enforcer Lei. You guys, very good. Lei Mayan said, we already know everything. The 7 of you have the most outstanding performance in this mission, so you can enter the next round. Next round? Hearing this, Dongfang Qi and the rest were stunned. Didn't they get to enter the dragon vein to cultivate after passing the test? Why was there a next round? Only Ling Shiqi secretly thought that his previous investment was right. What? Do you think that so many people are qualified to enter the dragon vein just because they destroyed a mere extreme fire manor? Lei Mayan sneered. However, she changed the topic. Of course, there are also rewards for passing the first round. Lei Mayan gave Feng Luan a meaningful glance. He immediately stepped forward and took out 7 items. Each item was wrapped in a layer of faint spiritual light. Taking a closer look, there were spirit tools, cultivation methods, spirit skills, pills, materials, and so on. Furthermore, these items were all at the 6th grade. For a spirit aperture realm cultivator, there were very few people who could possess a 6th-level treasure. For example, in their group, only Ling Shiqi and Di Chuan had 6th-level spiritual tools. This was enough to make others envious. Feng Luan pointed to the 7 items and said, these are your rewards. Choose according to the order of the list just now. Ling Shiqi, you are the first. Hearing this, Ling Shiqi took 2 steps forward. His gaze swept across the 7 items. He first eliminated materials and spirit tools. He had no use for materials now, and he didn't lack spirit tools. He still had to choose between cultivation methods and spirit skills. Regardless of whether it was a 6th-level cultivation method or spirit skill, they were both precious resources that could only be encountered but not sought. Furthermore, these 2 resources were very important to Ling Shiqi. Spirit skills were needless to say, they were the foundation of his existence. Cultivation methods were also something he urgently needed. Currently, the spirit apertures in his body were enough for him to directly cultivate to the 9th level of the spirit aperture realm. However, after that, there was still a long way to go. That was to open all 360 spirit apertures in his body. If he wanted to open the spirit apertures, he would need a lot of cultivation methods. Furthermore, they had to be at the 5th level at the very least. Therefore, he had to collect some cultivation methods above the 5th level in advance. The 6th level cultivation method in front of him, Nirvana Remnant Wind Scroll, was very tempting to him. Especially since he had absorbed the wind and thunder god's luck stone, there was still a lot of pure wind and thunder power in his body. Cultivating this cultivation method would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. The 6th level spirit skill Black Lotus Demonic Fist beside it was also very interesting. Generally speaking, fist techniques were mostly firm and fierce. However, this Black Lotus Demonic Fist did the opposite. With one punch, the Black Lotus Demonic Chi would enter the enemy's body. This Black Lotus demonic chi was extremely sinister. It could absorb the spirit chi in the body to strengthen itself. It was equivalent to a parasite. Moreover, it was very tough and difficult to get rid of. It could be said that once the Black Lotus demonic chi entered the body, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, regardless of whether it was Nirvana Remnant Wind Scroll or Black Lotus demonic fist, Ling Shichi wanted both. Therefore, he deliberately walked around these items a few times. He stood in front of the cultivation method and spirit skill for a little while, as if he was having a hard time making a choice. The others didn't rush him. In fact, Ling Shichi had already secretly used his unlimited skill points to learn both cultivation methods and spirit skills. Only a child would make a choice. Then Ling Shichi took away the elixir among the 7 items. Di Chuan immediately sighed softly. Obviously, he wanted this elixir. This elixir was called Crystallization Elixir. It was a necessary elixir to break through to Gang Spirit Realm from Spirit Aperture Realm. In the 4 realms of celestial being, to enter Spirit Pulse Realm, one had to upgrade his Sea of Chi to Spirit Sea. To enter Spirit Aperture Realm, one had to rotate his Spirit Sea to form spiritual spirals. If one wanted to break through to Gang Spirit Realm, one of the necessary conditions was to condense spiritual spirals into spiritual crystals. That was to change the spirit chi in the body qualitatively and condense it into a material object. However, it was easier said than done. Li Xianyang, the head of Xianyang's sect, betrayed the whole sect in order to break through to Gang Spirit Realm. He just wanted to get the Yuancha Aperture Crystal to help him condense spiritual crystals. It could be seen how difficult this step was. The crystallization elixir could greatly improve the success rate of condensing spiritual crystals. It could be said that the value of this elixir was no less than that of the Yuancha Aperture Crystal. As long as one had the crystallization elixir, one would be half a step into Gang Spirit Realm. Of course, the crystallization elixir could only increase one's confidence. As for whether one could successfully condense spiritual crystals, it still depended on one's own ability. Di Chuan was now at the 9th level of Spirit Aperture Realm. His next step was to condense spiritual crystals. Therefore, he hoped to get the crystallization elixir the most. Unfortunately, Ling Shichi beat him to it. After choosing, Ling Shichi also noticed Di Chuan's strangeness. His eyes flashed slightly, and he stood aside. Then it was Di Chuan's turn. However, what he wanted most was gone. The destructive wind scroll was not suitable for him. He also had a 6th level spiritual sword, so he took the Black Lotus demon fist in the end. The rest of the people also chose what they wanted in order. In the end, only the 6th level materials were left for Delta Origi. However, Delta Origi did not care. The 6th level materials were also valuable. It was good to exchange them for other things. Chapter 452. The few of them received their respective rewards. Overall, they were very satisfied. Coupled with the resources that they had previously received, this alone made them feel that this trip was not in vain. Lei Mayan stood up and said, "You 7 are all the pillars of the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. In the future, you will be the pillars of the Thunderfire Dynasty. We will be loyal to the Thunderfire Dynasty with all our strength," Ling Shichi and others shouted at the same time. "This time, you have successfully destroyed the Extreme Fire Village. Of course, this is not the only reward. There is another reward for each of you." Ling Shichi and others were all looking forward to it. Lei Mayan paused deliberately and said, "That is, an opportunity." They were stunned at first, but then they were all overjoyed. Except for Ling Shichi, these people were all supervisors of the Dark Thunder Guards or commissioners of the Discipline Commission. When they broke through to the Gang Spirit Realm, they would have the opportunity to be promoted to the Great Supervisor or Great Commissioner. However, it was only an opportunity. After all, there must be more than one person who was qualified to be promoted. Besides, there were very few positions for the Great Supervisor or Great Commissioner. Some people could even sit in this position for decades until they retired. So, even if they wanted to be promoted, they needed not only cultivation strength but also opportunity. And Lei Mayan gave them this opportunity. For example, Di Chuan was very likely to be promoted to the Great Commissioner after he broke through to the gang's spirit realm. How could they not be happy? Thank you, Lightning Executioner. Their voices were clearly more fervent than before. Lei Mayan chuckled and sat down again. Eunuch Gao continued, the extreme fire village has been destroyed. Then do you know why this sect was destroyed? This was a problem that had been bothering Leng Shiqi and the others. If the Great Righteousness sect and the Salt Gang had a close relationship with the Mountain Sea sect, then the Thunderblaze dynasty would be able to slowly pull out the fangs of the Mountain Sea sect. But the Extreme Fire Village had nothing to do with the Mountain Sea sect. Why was it on the blacklist of the Thunderfire dynasty? They looked at each other and shook their heads slightly. Eunuch Gao sneered in a cold voice, "Humph, that's because the Extreme Fire Village was determined not to change. I won't hide it from you. Not long ago, a prince secretly contacted Extreme Fire Manor, so Extreme Fire Manor shouldn't exist anymore." After Eunuch Gao finished speaking, he did not say anything else. However, his words shocked Leng Shiqi and the others. Everyone who could stand here was a shrewd person. They instantly understood the meaning behind Eunuch Gao's words. The Extreme Fire Manor saw that the current emperor didn't have much time left and decided to interfere in the succession. Leng Shiqi also felt that Zhu Huarong was being too whimsical. Perhaps he thought that this was an opportunity, but he neglected the fact that His Majesty was still alive. Based on the intelligence network of the Dark Thunder Guards, they had quickly found out that the Extreme Fire Manor was related to the prince, which was tantamount to ignoring the current emperor. If that was the case, the only outcome that awaited the Extreme Fire Manor was destruction. At the same time, Leng Shiqi suddenly remembered that when Feng Sha Mo led them to destroy the Golden Wing Academy, someone seemed to have mentioned that the Golden Wing Academy had something to do with a certain prince. He couldn't help but think that the person who hired the Blood Garment Pavilion back then was most likely someone from the Thunderblaze dynasty. Eunuch Gao's eyes suddenly became as sharp as an eagle's. His gaze swept across everyone, and everyone who was stared at felt a chill run down their spines. Therefore, I hope that you won't meddle in other people's business. Do you understand? Dongfang Qi and the others immediately nodded frantically and secretly wiped off the cold sweat on their foreheads. Leng Shiqi also understood that Eunuch Gao's actions were to warn them not to get involved in the succession. Otherwise, they would end up like the Extreme Fire Manor. Eunuch Gao's concerns were reasonable. Although the people present did not hold high positions, each of them had unlimited potential. The current emperor could at least hold on for a few more years. After a few years, these people could completely grow into the core power of the Thunderblaze dynasty. They were definitely worthy of being roped in by the various princes. Since you all understand, I can rest assured. Eunuch Gao then closed his eyes and seemed to be overwhelmed by sleepiness. Feng Luan spoke in a timely manner, you all completed the mission very quickly. Therefore, you have to wait for the other two groups to complete their missions before you can proceed to the next round. During this period of time, you can rest assured and stay in the City Lord's mansion. Speaking up to here, Feng Luan looked at Lei Mayan and Eunuch Gao who were sitting high up. Seeing that they had no intention of speaking, he sent Leng Shiqi and the others away. However, just as Leng Shiqi was about to walk out of the hall, Eunuch Gao's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. I will come and find you at midnight. Leng Shiqi was secretly shocked. Thoughts flashed through his mind one after another, but he couldn't figure out why Eunuch Gao would come and find him. However, he had already made contributions, so no matter what, it shouldn't be a bad thing. After Leng Shiqi parted with the others, he decided to take advantage of the fact that it was still early to sort out the resources he had on him. He had obtained a lot of resources from the Extreme Fire Manor and the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold. Even if it was divided equally among more than 20 people, it was still equivalent to the lifetime wealth of an ordinary Spirit Aperture Realm cultivator. He first sold all the resources that he didn't need to the system and received more than 2,000 system coins. Including his original one, he already had more than 5,000 points. At first, before Leng Shiqi came to Donglin County, he had specially prepared 3,000 system coins for emergencies. Unfortunately, he hadn't used them yet. At this time, the system coins had increased by a lot, which made him want to draw a lottery. However, he still held back. Instead of relying on his luck, it was better to do something practical. For example, buy some experience pills for the Goo King. In the battle between Leng Shiqi and Ji Wen, he had also deeply experienced the strength of the Goo King, so he wanted to cultivate the Goo King as soon as possible. And experience pills were the fastest and most convenient way. Then, Leng Shiqi opened the interface of the shop and chose the intermediate experience pills that were worth 300 system coins each. He directly bought 7 of them. Leng Shiqi's system coins instantly returned to more than 3,000, but he didn't feel the slightest bit of heartache. Instead, he summoned the Goo King and threw it an experience pill. The Goo King immediately flew around Leng Shiqi twice happily. Then, Leng Shiqi continued to sort out his resources. Of course, the most precious ones were the cultivation methods and spiritual skills. It was a pity that whether it was the cultivation methods or spiritual skills, the highest level was only the 4th level. The higher level ones should be in the minds of Zhu Huarong and Xiao Jingwu. Of course, Leng Shiqi didn't refuse them all and learn them all. This time, the spiritual skill library was expanded a lot, giving him more possibilities. In addition, the most precious ones were the awakening pills. Leng Shiqi had been in the 5th level of the spirit aperture realm for a while. Now that he had settled down, he had plans to break through. He estimated that as long as he refined 3 awakening pills, it would be enough for him to break through to the 6th level of the spirit aperture realm. Chapter 453. Leng Shiqi raised his head and swallowed an Acupore's awakening pill. Then, he began cultivating. It wasn't until midnight that Leng Shiqi suddenly opened his eyes. Not far from him, a person had appeared without anyone noticing. It was Eunuch Gao. Eunuch Gao. While he was cultivating, he spared some of his attention to think about why Eunuch Gao had come to him. Eunuch Gao had come in the middle of the night. Obviously, there was something shameful going on. In the end, Leng Shiqi felt that Eunuch Gao was probably trying to recruit him. Now that he thought about it, Eunuch Gao had given him the Cold Nether Manual and a place in the elite association in the Western Wilderness Prefecture. Now that he had performed extremely well in the mission to destroy the extreme volcano village, he was even more worthy of being recruited. Greetings, Supervisor Gao. Leng Shiqi immediately stood up and saluted. Eunuch Gao did not speak. He just rolled his eyes, and an extreme chill that seemed to come from the netherworld suddenly appeared. The Cold Nether Manual in Leng Shiqi's body began to operate on its own. Leng Shiqi was shocked, but he did not resist. Then Eunuch Gao nodded gently, and everything returned to normal. You really have practiced the Cold Nether Manual. Apart from that, you also have several cultivation methods. You are not simple, Eunuch Gao said in a hoarse voice. Thank you, Supervisor Gao, Leng Shiqi bowed his head and said respectfully. He did not directly explain why he had practiced so many cultivation methods at the same time. Eunuch Gao curled his lips and did not ask further. Since you have practiced my cultivation method, you can be considered half a disciple of mine. Before Eunuch Gao could continue, Leng Shiqi immediately bowed and shouted, Greetings, Master. Eunuch Gao had only said 2 sentences since he arrived. Leng Shiqi did not hear any malice in those 2 sentences, so he planned to ride on this big ship. Before coming to Donglin County, Yu Ruifeng's words reminded him that even if Leng Shiqi performed well in the elite meeting this time, he would still have to go back to Western Wilderness County in the future. Then, at most, he would be able to sit in the position of patrol inspector. It would be extremely difficult for him to be promoted. However, if he was only an inspector, it would be unrealistic for him to complete the Blood Seed plan smoothly. Therefore, he had to find a backer within the Dark Thunder Guards to prepare for the future, and Eunuch Gao was very suitable. Therefore, Leng Shiqi wanted to give it a try. It would be great if he succeeded, but if he failed, he wouldn't lose anything. Eunuch Gao's expression changed slightly. Then, he laughed, and the wrinkles on his face trembled. Huh, you sure know how to climb up a pole. Interesting. Leng Shiqi flipped his hand and took out a mustard seed bag. This is a small gift that disciple has prepared for Shizuan. Please accept it. What he took out was almost all the resources he had on him. As long as he could really open a path to Eunuch Gao, any amount of resources would be worth it. Eunuch Gao waved his hand and said, "You are smart, but I can only accept you as a nominal disciple at most. Besides, how can I accept your things? On the contrary, I should give you a meeting gift." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi secretly thought that he had made the right bet. You have talent, ability, and skill. I like it very much. You can accept this. As he spoke, he took out a gray token. Leng Shiqi looked at it carefully. There was a mysterious pattern engraved on it, but he didn't find any clues. This is the Imperial Supervisor token. With this token, even the patrol inspector will have to be polite to you. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows. Imperial Supervisor token? According to Eunuch Gao, this thing could even make the patrol inspector afraid? This was equivalent to giving him a lot of power. This disciple thanks Master for the reward. Leng Shiqi immediately lowered his head and said respectfully. Eunuch Gao nodded with satisfaction. Lu Xingji, you are a smart person. I see your potential, so I believe you will give me what I want. Leng Shiqi knew very well that Eunuch Gao was trying to rope him in because he wanted his loyalty. In a few years, there would definitely be a turmoil in the Thunder Flame dynasty. At that time, no one knew which prince would ascend the throne. As the saying went, a new emperor brings new ministers. Eunuch Gao, as the head steward, might not be able to stay out of it. Therefore, he had to start cultivating his own followers. Thus, Leng Shiqi said solemnly, this subordinate will definitely be loyal to Eunuch Gao. Hearing this, Eunuch Gao smiled again. He was very satisfied with Leng Shiqi. Seeing that Leng Shiqi was so sensible, he was even happier. Since you and I are considered master and disciple, I can let you go through the back door. The next test you will undergo will be very interesting. Very interesting? Leng Shiqi wondered if he had heard wrong when Eunuch Gao described the next test like this. However, he didn't expect Eunuch Gao to ask a very strange question. How are your survival skills? Leng Shiqi was stunned for a moment before replying, it's all right. He had the ghostly spring steps, a movement technique that was both light and teleportation. It was very good whether it was chasing or escaping. Eunuch Gao revealed a meaningful smile and said, that's good. However, before the other two groups complete their missions, you should think about your survival skills. This sentence made Leng Shiqi's heart skip a beat. It sounded like the next test would be very dangerous. This made him a little bewildered. The elite council was still a selection of talents, so there had never been any deaths. Even if they went to destroy the extreme fire village, there was still a lot of danger. However, if you didn't want to take the risk, you could of course give up. However, you would definitely be eliminated. Moreover, those who could enter the next round were prodigies among prodigies. The Thunderflame dynasty was eager to nurture them. Why would they joke about their lives? However, Leng Shiqi saw that Eunuch Gao didn't seem to be joking. Alright, that's all I have to say. You should prepare well. After saying this, a faint cold aura surged out of his body. Then, he silently left. Leng Shiqi was still carefully thinking about the meaning of Eunuch Gao's words. He then thought about how he didn't seem to have many survival skills other than the ghostly spring steps. This was because his fighting style was rather aggressive. He had always used offense as defense. His storm-like attacks could defeat his opponent in a short period of time. Therefore, he rarely used defensive spirit techniques. Looks like I have to use this time to get more defensive skills. Just as he was thinking to himself, a series of knocks came from outside and pulled his thoughts back. Brother Lu, I am Di Chuan. It's very presumptuous of me to visit so late at night, but I have something to discuss with you. Please see me. Chapter 454. Ling Shiqi heard the voice outside and chuckled. Dichuan's visit was within his expectations, so he gathered his thoughts and opened the door. "Brother Di, please come in." After the two sat down, Dichuan went straight to the point. "Brother Lu, I won't hide it from you. I came here to make a deal with you." As soon as he opened his mouth, Ling Shiqi knew what he was going to say. Dichuan wanted nothing more than the crystal formation pill, but he still deliberately asked, "Brother Di, please speak. Brother Lu should know that my cultivation is already at the 9th level of the spirit aperture realm, and I'm not far from condensing a spirit crystal, so I really need a crystal formation pill." Dichuan looked at Ling Shiqi's expression and saw that he was expressionless. Dichuan understood and continued, "I came here with sincerity. Brother Lu, please state your conditions." Ling Shiqi thought that it was as expected. Actually, Ling Shiqi didn't really need this pill. First of all, in terms of cultivation, he was still a long way from the peak of the spirit aperture realm. Even if he broke through to the 9th level of the spirit aperture realm, he wouldn't be in a hurry to condense a spirit crystal because he still needed to open up all the spirit apertures. If he really could open up all the 360 spirit apertures in his body, then condensing a spirit crystal wouldn't be a problem. Therefore, he could take out this crystal formation pill to trade. Since they were going to make a deal, Ling Shiqi obviously wanted cultivation methods and spirit techniques the most. However, Dichuan definitely wouldn't hand them over so easily. Even if he was willing to take them out, they wouldn't be of high quality. Therefore, Ling Shiqi planned to see what Dichuan could offer first. He directly took out the crystal formation pill from his mustard seed bracelet and placed it in his hand. "Brother Di is really straightforward. I also need this crystal formation pill, but I don't need it urgently. If Brother Di wants it, of course you can take it. I just don't know what Brother Di wants to trade for it." Hearing that Ling Shiqi was willing to trade the crystal formation pill, Dichuan's face immediately lit up. He hurriedly said, "Brother Lu, please take a look." As he spoke, he took out a piece of paper with many cultivation resources listed on it. "This is the largest amount of resources I can use. Brother Lu can choose whatever you want. Pick at will." Ling Shiqi raised his eyebrows slightly, but when he finished reading the list on the paper, his face sank again. He said with a displeased tone, "Brother Di, forgive me for being blunt, but even if all these things are added together, they are still inferior to the crystal formation pill." Dichuan also blushed. "Brother Lu, this is all I have. If it's really not enough, can Brother Lu wait for a while? I will send a message to Ningyang County to transfer some resources over." Ling Shiqi shook his head, showing a hint of disappointment. "Brother Di, you still don't understand. These resources are indeed a lot, but they are too ordinary and useless to me. Even if it was 10 times more, I wouldn't agree." Dichuan also understood what Ling Shiqi meant. These resources were not precious enough and their quality was too low. However, when Dichuan came to participate in the elite meeting, he didn't bring anything too valuable. It was impossible for him to come all the way from Ningyang County in such a short time. Just as he was frowning, he clapped his hands and suddenly thought of something. Then he took out something similar to a finger bone. This thing was grayish-white and didn't look like a human finger bone. Even if it was left motionless, there would be traces of gray qi lingering around it. As for Ling Shiqi, the moment he saw this thing, he could feel the evil aura from it. And it was a very familiar kind of evil qi. It was the same as the aura of the evil old man that Nine Leaf devoured in Shi City. Ling Shiqi was secretly surprised. He picked up the finger bone and looked at it carefully for a while, but he didn't see anything special about it. He only knew that this thing was definitely not simple. Dichuan saw that Ling Shiqi seemed to be interested in this thing, so he smiled. "Brother Lu, I got this thing by chance on my way from Ningyang County to Donglin Town. I have asked several treasure appraisers to appraise it. They all said that this thing is at least a 6th level treasure, but they can't see how to use it. If you like it, all the resources on the list and this finger bone will belong to you. What do you think?" Ling Shiqi began to ponder. After a long while, Dichuan became more and more anxious. Ling Shiqi said, "I'll take this finger bone, but I don't want the things on the list. Hearing this, Di Chuan frowned secretly. Ling Shiqi must have other motives for not wanting the resources. He asked in a low voice, "What do you want, Brother Lu?" Ling Shiqi chuckled, "I want Brother Di to stand on my side." As Ling Shiqi spoke, he looked directly at Di Chuan. Di Chuan quickly reacted. They were all going to enter the next round of the test. No matter who passed the test in the other two groups, they must all be outstanding. Then it was hard to say who would be the leader in the next round. After all, both Wu Diao and Zhuge Puha were strong competitors. So if Ling Shiqi wanted to continue to be the leader, he had to start winning people's hearts. Di Chuan only hesitated a little, and then agreed at once. Not to mention the problem of resources, Ling Shiqi's terrible record of killing masters in Gang's spirit realm was enough to make Di Chuan bow his head. He nodded and said, "Brother Lu, don't worry. I will definitely support you in the next round." "Thank you, Brother Di. This crystallization pill is a thank you gift." Ling Shiqi handed over the crystallization pill in his hand. Di Chuan's face lit up with joy. After a few polite words, Di Chuan left happily. Ling Shiqi was still sitting in the chair. After a while, he glanced at a corner of the room and said coldly, "How long do you want to hide?" However, there was nothing there. Ling Shiqi snorted and flicked out a sword chi of 3 Ju. A black flame suddenly rose in that place, and a slim figure appeared. It was Lian Yi. In fact, Lian Yi had sneaked in when Di Chuan pushed the door open and left. It had to be said that her sneaking was very clever. Even Di Chuan, who was a whole realm higher than her, did not notice her. That was to say, Ling Shiqi's spiritual force was very strong, so he felt a trace of strange fluctuation. Lian Yi still wore the black veil on her face, but there was a trace of a smile in her eyes. "Mr. Lu is really sensitive." Ling Shiqi looked straight at Lian Yi. In his opinion, since Lian Yi could participate in the elite meeting with the cultivation of the late stage of spiritual pulse realm, she must have a great background. Lian Yi was very low-key in this task, or there was nothing for her to do, so she did not enter the next round. But then again, Lian Yi should be ready to leave Donglin County at this time. Why did she come here in the middle of the night? Ling Shiqi asked directly, "If you have something to say, say it." The smile in Lian Ye's eyes deepened. She said, "Should I call you Lu Xingji or Zhuoqiu?" Chapter 455. When Ling Shiqi heard the name, Zhuoqiu, from Lian Yi, he was shocked. He had used this identity to enter the illusory spirit's secret realm and fought with Lian Yi. However, Lian Ye's memories should have been tampered with by Meng Tianzong. How did she recognize him now? However, on second thought, Ling Shiqi realized that Lian Ye's memories should have been tampered with before she entered the alternate dimension of the Divine Dream Palace. Therefore, the memories of their initial battle still existed. Perhaps she had recognized him as Zhuoqiu from some clues. Although Ling Shiqi was shocked, he still maintained a calm expression. He said indifferently, "If Miss Lian Yi is here to say these strange things to me, please leave." Lian Yi acted as if she did not hear Ling Shiqi's words and continued, "Actually, I came to the elite gathering purely to join in the fun. However, the moment I saw you, I felt a sense of déjà vu from you. However, I am certain that I have never seen you before. This has puzzled me, so I began to observe you. I have been observing you all this time. When you fought with Di Chuan and Ji Wen, even though your cultivation methods and spirit techniques were very different from before, there were still traces that could be traced, and there was still a sense of familiarity between your moves. I remember when I left the illusory spirit's secret realm, I knew that you and Ozu had obtained the Divine Illusion Palace's legacy cultivation method. I specially went to look through the secrets of the Divine Illusion Palace. In the end, I found that the spirit technique you used when fighting with Ji Wen was very similar to the 5-God flowing light technique recorded in the secret records. You can't be Ozu, so you are Zhuoqiu." Ling Shiqi was truly shocked that Lian Yi could accurately identify the 5-God flowing light technique. This cultivation method was passed down from 10,000 years ago. Where did Lian Yi find the secret records of the Divine Illusion Palace to be so detailed? She even knew the cultivation method and spirit techniques like the back of her hand. Lian Ye's identity made Leng Shiqi even more surprised and curious. Since he had been recognized, Leng Shiqi no longer hid it. He said straightforwardly, "State your conditions." The condition he spoke of was naturally the condition for Lian Yi to keep his secret. Unexpectedly, Lian Yi shook her head and said, "I don't have any conditions. I just want you to answer a few of my questions truthfully." Lian Ye's actions made Leng Shiqi feel even more troubled. He said, "Ask away." Lian Yi sat opposite Leng Shiqi. She stared at Leng Shiqi with her black gem-like eyes and said, "I know you're not Sua Qiuyu either. That Sua Qiuyu is just an ordinary rogue cultivator. How could he reach the middle stage of Spirit Aperture Realm in 2 years and have the power to kill Gang Spirit Realm Masters? Therefore, Lu Xingji is your original identity, right? According to what I know, you are the disciple of Chu Hezheng, a loose cultivator at the unity of heaven and man realm. He was also the one who pulled strings to stuff you into the Dark Thunder Guards. After that, you used your Spirit Pulse realm cultivation to quickly eliminate dissidents and secure your position as supervisor. After that, you single-handedly destroyed a third-rate sect, the Profound Yang sect. Then, you went on a diplomatic mission to Zhu Lu country. Coincidentally, Zhu Lu country went through a great change. When you returned, you were already at the Spirit Aperture Realm and had been promoted to Great Supervisor. It can be said that you are full of surprises and inconceivable. Therefore, I'm very curious, who are you? At the end, Lian Ye's eyes became somewhat cold. On the other hand, the more Leng Shiqi listened, the more shocked he became. Lian Yi had actually investigated him from beginning to end. Moreover, Lian Yi had been carrying out missions with him all this time. How did she find out? This Lian Yi can not only get detailed information about the Divine Illusion Palace from 10,000 years ago, but she can also find information about the West Baron Prefecture and even Zhu Lu country. In the Dark Thunder Guards, even the famous inspector might not have this kind of authority, right? Just who is she? Leng Shiqi thought to himself. At the same time, killing intent appeared in his heart. However, this killing intent was instantly dispelled by him. Lian Ye's identity indeed made him a bit cautious. Even if he wanted to kill her, he couldn't do it here. Therefore, he said, "Just as you said, you have already investigated my identity. You already know who I am, so why are you still asking me?" Lian Yi didn't seem to be satisfied with this answer. She said in a cold voice, "There is indeed no problem with your background. However, the problem is that before you appeared in the illusory spirit's secret realm, there was nothing special about you. However, since the illusory spirit's secret realm, your opportunities, cultivation, and strength have all increased at an unimaginable rate. I'm not boasting, but even in the entire Thunderflame dynasty, those who can cultivate to the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm at my age can be counted on one hand. However, you, in less than 2 years, jumped from the early stage of the Spirit Pulse realm to the middle stage of the Spirit Aperture realm. Your identity also changed from a rank 1 rogue cultivator to a supervisor of the Dark Thunder Guards. This kind of change was simply appalling. It's as if you've become a completely different person." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi laughed involuntarily. "These things may seem inconceivable to you, but everything I have today was exchanged with my life. You haven't experienced what despair is, you haven't stepped into the abyss. If you had experienced life and death several times, I think you wouldn't have come to question me." Lian Ye's eyes changed slightly. She stared blankly for a moment before saying, "What you said may be reasonable, but you are still very suspicious." Leng Shiqi finally understood. It seemed that Lian Yi hadn't reported her suspicions of him yet. She only came tonight to ask about it. This made him feel a bit more at ease. He replied, "I think you're thinking too much. My actions in the Western Desolate Province were all under the eyes of Supervisor Yu Ruifeng. Moreover, it was he who brought me to Zhu Lugua. However, there are some secrets that you don't know. If you really can't, you can ask Sir Yu what happened in Zhu Lugua." Moreover, it was Eunuch Gao who allowed me to participate in the elite meeting. You cannot believe me, but you can't not believe Sir Yu and Eunuch Gao, right? Could it be that I can control them? He brought up Supervisor Yu Ruifeng and Eunuch Gao, one of the 4 supervisors of the Dark Thunder Guards. This made Lian Yi start to waver. She thought to herself, could it be that I really missed some crucial information? This won't do. When I go back, I have to carefully investigate. This Lu Xingji is too outstanding. He will most likely be transferred to the headquarters in the future. He can't be unclean at all. Leng Shiqi saw that she didn't speak and struck while the iron was hot. He flipped his hand and a ball of cold underworld energy condensed in his palm. With your knowledge, you should be able to see what this is. This is cold underworld energy. You cultivate the cold underworld scripture? Lian Yi exclaimed in a low voice. At the same time, she looked at Leng Shiqi with a strange gaze. Chapter 456. Leng Shiqi admitted, that's right. This is the cold nether scripture. Eunuch Gao has already passed it to me. This means that I'm definitely trustworthy. Lian Yi was both surprised and puzzled when she saw Leng Shiqi use the cold nether scripture. She knew about the cold nether scripture. It was a cultivation technique created by Eunuch Gao. However, she had the impression that only Eunuch Gao's adopted sons cultivated this cultivation technique. Could it be that Lu Xingji is a... Lian Yi sized up Leng Shiqi, causing him to feel cold all over. However, most of the suspicion in her heart had been dispelled. She had some understanding of Eunuch Gao. If Leng Shiqi's background wasn't clean, then Eunuch Gao would definitely not pass the cultivation technique to Leng Shiqi. Eunuch Gao's actions not only proved that Leng Shiqi's background was clean, it also meant that he wanted to nurture Leng Shiqi as a trusted aide. Lian Yi lowered her head and pondered for a moment. Since that's the case, then I'll take it that I've wronged you. However, the matter of you attacking me in the illusory spirit's secret realm isn't over. This. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but be stunned. If he remembered correctly, it was clearly Lian Yi who attacked him first in the illusory spirit's secret realm. Why was it the other way around now? However, Leng Shiqi became vigilant when Lian Yi mentioned the illusory spirit's secret realm. After all, there were very few people who knew that he was Zhuoqiu, the person who obtained the inheritance of the Divine Illusion Palace's cultivation technique. If Lian Yi were to leak this news, it would definitely bring him endless trouble. Miss Lian Yi, you secretly investigated me for the sake of the Dark Lightning Guards, so I don't mind. However, I hope that Miss Lian Yi won't leak the fact that I once used the identity of Zhuoqiu. Of course. What Leng Shiqi did not expect was that Lian Yi would actually agree immediately. However, in the end, she rolled her eyes and said, but I have a condition. When he heard the word condition, Leng Shiqi felt even more assured. If Lian Yi didn't mention anything, then he would think too much. Speak your mind. If you come to the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters in the future, help me do something. Lian Yi put forward her condition. However, this condition caused Leng Shiqi to frown. This kind of condition was the most troublesome. He asked in return, Miss Lian Yi is so confident that I will be transferred to the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters? Lian Yi chuckled. Eunuch Gao even passed on the cultivation method to you. Wouldn't it be a matter of time before you were transferred to headquarters? Don't worry, the things I ask you to do will definitely be within the scope of your ability, and you will be compensated accordingly. Leng Shiqi hesitated for a moment. He could imagine that what Lian Yi wanted him to do was related to the internal strife of the Dark Thunder Guard. However, he was already on Eunuch Gao's side. If he agreed now, how would he explain himself to Eunuch Gao in the future? Seeing that Leng Shiqi was still hesitating, Lian Yi continued, don't think too much about it. That matter is my personal matter, but I can't tell you right now. Private matters? Then there was no problem. Helping her with a private matter could eliminate countless troubles. No matter how he looked at it, it was worth it. Thus, Leng Shiqi said, this one will listen to Miss Lian Ye's orders. However, if Miss Lian Ye's request is too excessive, then forgive this one for going back on his word. Okay, I believe Brother Lu won't go back on his word. It's late, this one will take her leave first. After Lian Yi finished speaking, she turned into a black shadow and left. Leng Shiqi looked at Lian Ye's departing figure with a cold glint in his eyes. Today's Lian Yi was much more mature and shrewd than before. However, it was still not deep enough. Fortunately, it was not deep enough. Leng Shiqi brought out Eunuch Gao to wash away his suspicions, but there was a flaw in it. He made Lian Yi subconsciously think that Eunuch Gao knew everything about him. In reality, Eunuch Gao did not know that he had entered the illusory spirit's secret realm with a fake identity in the celestial layer. Lian Yi was still a bit naive. Leng Shiqi secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Tonight, 3 people had come to find him in succession. Among them, he had known about the arrival of Eunuch Gao and Dichuan in advance. However, Lian Ye's appearance had really given him a wake-up call. Regardless of Lian Ye's identity, since she could investigate him so thoroughly, then there must be someone else in the Dark Thunder Guards who could find out. The reason why Lian Yi was able to confirm that he was Zhuo Qiuyu was because she recognized that the rotating ice and fire flowing light array came from the 5-god flowing light art. It seems that I can't use any spiritual skills related to the 5-god flowing light art so easily. It's best if I confuse these spiritual skills again and change them. Leng Shiqi secretly made up his mind. Then, he used the soul-splitting technique to split half of his consciousness into the illusory spirit world and began to deduce and fuse the spiritual skills. Time passed bit by bit. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The other 2 groups that had destroyed the Great Righteousness sect and the Salt clan had also completed their missions. The destruction of these 2 sects had once again caused an earthquake in Donglin County. Although the destruction of the Extreme Fire Manor had attracted the attention of many people, it was still the Twin Pole Mountain stronghold that had destroyed it. There was a deep hatred between the 2 sides. Sooner or later, there would be a battle between the 2, so everyone discussed it for a while. However, in the short span of a month, the second-rate Great Righteousness sect and the Salt clan had been destroyed one after another. 3 second-rate sects had ceased to exist in a row. This kind of thing had never happened in Donglin County. Even in the entire Thunderfire dynasty, there was no precedent like this. This instantly made everyone feel that a storm was coming. One had to know that these 2 sects were not just second-rate forces. They could be said to be the Mountain Sea sect's pawn and the Mountain Sea sect's money bag. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that someone was targeting the Mountain Sea sect. However, the Mountain Sea sect was a top force on the world's ranking of sects and dominated Donglin County. Who would dare to target the Mountain Sea sect? Who would have the ability to target the Mountain Sea sect? Moreover, many people had received information that these 3 destroyed forces had a large number of mysterious Spirit Aperture Realm experts participating. When did so many Spirit Aperture Realm experts appear in Donglin County? Connecting all these together, some people guessed that this was very likely the Thunderfire dynasty's doing. The dynasty wanted to suppress the Mountain Sea sect and take back the hegemony of Donglin County. As the news spread, all the spirit cultivator sects in Donglin County were suddenly in danger. If this guess was true, then the dynasty and the Mountain Sea sect would definitely fight. At that time, they might also be implicated. Weren't the Great Righteousness sect and the Salt clan the best examples? At this time, in the main hall of the Donglin City's City Lord's mansion, there were about 20 people gathered. These people were the instigators of the destruction of the 3 forces, and they were the best among them. Other than Eunuch Gao and Lei Mayan who sat at the top, the others were clearly divided into 3 groups. They were respectively led by Leng Shiqi, Wu Diao, and Zhu Gapuha. However, the number of people in these 3 groups was different. Leng Shiqi had a total of 7 people, which was the group with the largest number of people. Wu Diao had 6 people, and Zhu Gapuha only had 5. At this moment, they were all standing with their hands behind their backs, looking respectful. Lei Mayan looked at the 18 people with a smile on her face. The 18 of you can be called the elites of the elites. Now, I will tell you the next round of the mission. Everyone's expression became serious. The first round of the test was to destroy a second-rate force, so the second round would definitely be more difficult. Chapter 457. Lei Mayan retracted her smile. She stretched out her jade-like arm, and bracelets flew out from it. The bracelets suddenly split into 5 different colored halos. She continuously formed seals, and the 5 bracelets instantly blossomed with radiance. Once again, they gradually overlapped with each other, forming a dusky light door. This is the minor 5 elements chaos paradise. There is a small space inside. Your test is inside, and your mission is to come out of the minor 5 elements chaos paradise alive. As soon as she said this, everyone's expression froze. Coming out alive was considered to have completed the mission. That meant that there was definitely danger inside that could threaten their lives. Of course, none of these people had any thoughts of wavering, and none of them were willing to withdraw. Because they knew that if they really passed the test, what awaited them would definitely be soaring into the sky. Not only could they enter the dragon vein to cultivate, their future path of advancement would be smooth. Under this kind of strong pressure, everyone became even more motivated. Lei Mayan flicked her finger, and instantly, more than a dozen streams of light hit everyone's body. Leng Shiqi lowered his head to look, and a small blue token appeared in his hand. Coming out alive is the most basic requirement. Everyone has one of these tokens, and you can compete with each other without any restrictions. In addition, there are also some strange creatures in the paradise. Killing them can give you soul stones. 1 kilogram of soul stones can be exchanged for a token. After you come out, the 5 people with the most tokens will be considered to have passed the test. Everyone present looked at each other with hostility in their eyes. In the end, only 5 out of the 18 of them could pass the test. Moreover, they could snatch the tokens from each other. This was to let them kill each other. At this moment, everyone standing here was an enemy. Perhaps in this minor 5 elements chaos paradise, the most dangerous thing was not the strange creatures, but these people. Alright, the minor 5 elements chaos paradise can only be maintained for 7 days at most. Hurry up and go in. As for how to come out, you can think of a way yourselves. At this point, Lei Mayan waved her hand, and everyone walked into the gray door of light one by one. As soon as he walked through the door, Leng Shiqi felt as if the world around him had turned upside down. However, he was still very calm. He had experienced this kind of situation many times and was starting to get used to it. When his eyes were able to see, all he could see was a thick layer of yellow sand. As far as the eye could see, this place seemed like a desert. And there was no one around him. Leng Shiqi muttered to himself, "It seems that everyone has been separated." He looked around and found that the surrounding environment was almost exactly the same. There was not a single point of reference. Under such circumstances, even if he walked in a certain direction, he would unknowingly deviate from it. Moreover, he didn't know where to go. As Leng Shiqi pondered, an idea flashed through his mind. He immediately opened the system map. Previously, he had spent a total of 10,000 system coins to obtain a full map. However, he did not know if the system map would be of any use in this mini chaos paradise. When he opened the system map, he saw that the map immediately showed 6 areas of different colors. The system map was actually effective. Leng Shiqi could not help but be delighted. He remembered that when he was at Gushan Peak and was pulled into that small space by Tu Deng, the system map was not of any use. He could not help but sigh. That 10,000 system coins was really worth it. He immediately began to carefully study the map of this paradise. First, there were 5 areas of different colors that were distributed in a pentagon shape. He was currently in the yellow area, at the bottom right corner. He was not very far from the red area. These 5 regions should represent the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, and I'm in the earth region. It's a pity that this map can't show other people's locations. Thinking of this, Leng Shiqi suddenly froze. Since the system map could be used, then the Fate skill should be able to be used as well. As long as he activated the Fate skill, he would be able to quickly find the others. Just as Leng Shiqi was about to activate the skill, the yellow sand under his feet suddenly shone with a strange rhythm. Immediately, Leng Shiqi suddenly knelt down. He actually felt as if his body was suddenly pressed down by a mountain, making it impossible for him to get up. His face was red, and layers of sweat instantly seeped out of his face. Even the blood in his body began to drop, and his meridians and bones emitted a slight friction sound. Leng Shiqi exclaimed in his heart, the gravity has increased. What surprised him the most was that the strength of his body was not weak. He had never forgotten to temper his body, and now, with just the strength of his body, he was comparable to a spirit cultivator in the early or middle stages of the spirit pulse stage. Even so, he was still pressed down by the invisible gravity to the point that he could not breathe. One could imagine how strong the gravity was. Leng Shiqi's mind moved, and black and red demonic chi surged as the demonic beast blood rune armor attached to his body, reducing the pressure on him by a lot. He could finally stand up with difficulty. However, he was still worried. He had a strong body and the demonic beast blood rune armor, so he could only stand with difficulty. What about the others? Wouldn't they be pressed to the ground and unable to move? What worried him was that in this situation, if the strange creature that Lei Mian spoke of appeared, what should he do? If he couldn't even move, wouldn't that be the same as sending himself to death? Rustle, rustle, rustle. Suddenly, rustling sounds came from the surroundings, and then small mounds emerged from the yellow sand on the ground, as if something was about to come out. The corner of Leng Shiqi's mouth twitched. He didn't expect that he had the potential to jinx it. He hurriedly lifted his foot, but found that even lifting it a little was extremely difficult. Immediately, his entire body overflowed with demonic chi and gathered at his feet. He used the Netherworld Ghost Steps. The Netherworld Ghost Steps that could originally be as fast as a ghost could only allow him to run at the speed of a normal mortal. But in the blink of an eye, the small mounds around him finally broke out of the ground. Looking closely, they were monsters that seemed to be formed from small stones. These monsters were not big, only as tall as a person, but they did not have legs. They floated in the air, and with a casual movement, they could float more than 10 feet away. Seeing this scene, Leng Shiqi's heart was bitter beyond words. He remembered that night when Eunuch Gao had asked him about his ability to escape and survive. At that time, he was still a little confident. But now, it seemed that he had overestimated himself. Because even if he used his fastest speed, it was far from being able to compare to these stone monsters. Leng Shiqi took a deep breath, and his eyes flashed with a dense killing intent. Since he could not escape, then he would kill them all. Chapter 458. Leng Shiqi took out the Devil Advent battle saber, but the arm that was holding the saber's hilt suddenly dropped. He frowned and put away the demon arrival battle blade. It was already very difficult for him to move, and using a spiritual weapon here was a burden. Then, Leng Shiqi pointed his index finger, and a blood-red lightning shot through the air. The thunderclap blood heavenly finger was supposed to be as fast as lightning, but now it was affected by gravity, and its speed was much slower. Fortunately, the stone monsters did not seem to have much intelligence, and the thunderclap blood heavenly finger still hit one of them. The blood-red lightning instantly poked a large hole in the stone monster's body, but the stone monster did not feel anything and continued to stick close to him as if nothing had happened. Leng Shiqi used his fingers as a sword, and with a shake of his arm, dozens of tri-extinction sword chi were released in an instant, enveloping all the stone monsters around him. With a series of clanking sounds, the stone monsters were scattered by the tri-extinction sword chi, but most of them stood up shakily. Leng Shiqi's expression became more and more serious. These monsters did not have much intelligence, and their defense was not very strong, but they were very difficult to kill. If he did not specifically cultivate a body tempering technique, he would be tortured to death by these monsters sooner or later. I can't fight them here, and the demonic beast blood rune armor can't be maintained for too long. I should leave this place first. Leng Shiqi changed his plan. He raised his hand, and a few fingernail-sized black crystals flew out from the fragments of the monsters he had killed. These were the soul stones that Lei Mayan had mentioned. Then, a large amount of cold air rose from his feet, and this cold air spread out like a wave, freezing all the stone monsters nearby. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he quickly activated the Fate skill, and the system map immediately appeared and began to enlarge. Leng Shiqi stared at the map, and there were indeed more than 10 figures on it. After 2 breaths, he found the location of the Delta Origi. However, his pupils suddenly shrank, and then, he disappeared in the red, blue, and yellow light. At this moment, in the wood region, this place was like a deep and serene forest. The only thing that stood out from the rest was that it was a withered forest. Although there were countless trees and all kinds of plants that he had never seen before, these plants were all withered and looked like they were about to die. And at this time, 2 people were fighting. One of them was dressed in a green robe that covered his face. Only a pair of cold eyes that were filled with killing intent could be seen. His cultivation was at the 7th level of Gang's spirit realm. With a wave of his hand, all the plants nearby were controlled at will as if they were his arms. It seemed that he was a spiritual caster of wood. The other person was the Delta Origi. At this moment, Delta Origi was completely at a disadvantage. The green-robed man's cultivation was far above hers, and in this unique environment, Delta Origi was already struggling. The green-robed man said with a cold expression, "A mere early-stage spirit aperture realm cultivator can enter this place. However, I happened to meet you, so I picked up a token for free. Little girl, hand over the token obediently. This place is constantly absorbing our spiritual energy. You will be defeated sooner or later. Give me the token now, and you may be able to save your life." Delta Origi did not answer because she had already seen the killing intent in the green-robed man's eyes. Therefore, even if she handed over the token, the green-robed man would still not let her go. Delta Origi immediately forced out more than 10 drops of blood essence from her fingers. Her face instantly turned pale, and the blood essence condensed into 3 sparkling bloodlines, and then attached to her autumn water-like long sword. The spiritual sword turned into a blood sword in the blink of an eye. Delta Origi was going to fight with all her might. However, Delta Origi's expression was normal. Whether it was on the Blood Fog Island or in the Blood Prison, she had fought with all her might too many times. When the green-robed man saw this, the smile on his face disappeared. He actually felt a trace of danger from Delta Origi's body. A person who had just entered the Spirit Aperture realm was actually a threat to him, a 7th-level Spirit Aperture realm cultivator. The green-robed man's hand seals flew, and the 2 towering trees beside him were uprooted, turning into 2 huge beasts that attacked from both sides. Delta Origi's blood sword trembled, and a layer of ghost fire ignited on it. Soon after, a blood-colored sword slashed out like a waterfall. The sword slashed on the huge trees, and immediately tore open terrifying scars one after another, but the huge trees did not feel the slightest bit. Every branch on the huge trees turned into sharp spears and long swords, ruthlessly stabbing towards Delta Origi, completely trapping her in a sinister cage. At this moment, the green-robed man could be considered to have forced Delta Origi into a desperate situation. She also had some explosive and escape methods, but once she used them, there was a possibility that her true identity would be exposed. But if she didn't use them, she might really die here. Just as Delta Origi was about to use her trump card, a beam of red, blue, and yellow light suddenly appeared, and a figure wearing demonic armor walked out from the light. Delta Origi and the green-robed man's gaze immediately turned towards him. To be able to appear in such a manner, he was undoubtedly an expert. However, the green-robed man did not know if this person was a participant of the elite meeting, or a monster that originally existed in this world. However, in the next moment, that person actually staggered a few steps forward, and almost fell to the ground. A stunned expression immediately appeared on the green-robed man's face. What kind of situation was this? Delta Origi also recognized that this person was Leng Shiqi. She once saw Leng Shiqi wearing this demonic armor when he fought against the disciples of Liuha's spiritual region. Of course, Leng Shiqi was directly teleported over using the Fate skill. However, when he suddenly went from the gravity space of the Earth region to a normal space, his body was not used to it, so he almost fell. After he steadied himself, his pair of green-white eyes looked towards the green-robed man, and his eyes emitted undisguised killing intent. The green-robed man could not figure out Ling Shiqi for a moment. Just as he was about to test him, Ling Shiqi moved first. Ling Shiqi raised his hands to the sky, and a burst of dazzling light suddenly appeared. In an instant, a blazing sun with blazing green flames condensed into a blazing sun. The green-robed man's expression changed, and his hand's seals changed, intending to order the two giant trees to attack Ling Shiqi. Unfortunately, at this moment, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. He only saw 5 tall giants that looked like gods appear in front of him, making him want to kneel at their feet. He even completely forgot what he was doing. At the same time, Delta Origi used her sword technique, and a blood-colored crescent moon rose behind her. The poisoned sun shone brightly, and the blood moon was eerie. Under the sun and moon shining together, the two giant tree monsters were crushed one after another, and then the green-robed man who was distracted for a moment lost his life. The green-robed man, who was so arrogant just a moment ago, was instantly killed by the two of them. With the green-robed man dead, Delta Origi finally breathed a sigh of relief. She nodded to Ling Shiqi, and then swallowed a pill to recover her spiritual energy. However, her face was still very pale. The pill could help her quickly recover her spiritual energy, but the blood she lost could only be slowly recovered. Ling Shiqi skillfully hooked the green-robed man's mustard seed bag, and secretly absorbed his remnant soul. At this time, Delta Origi walked over, panting, and lifted the green-robed man's hood with the tip of her sword. Who is this person? It seems to be Zhuge Pu's team. Ling Shiqi shrugged, a dead person's name, don't worry about it. Chapter 459. That's true. Delta Origi nodded slightly. Ling Shiqi removed his war beast armor and looked around. When he came to this area, he quickly noticed that the spiritual energy in his body was constantly overflowing. This should be the restriction of the wood area. However, compared to the abnormal gravity of the earth area, this place was really much better. After all, which person who could enter the second round didn't have a large number of pills on them? As long as the pills weren't exhausted, the loss of spiritual energy was completely within an acceptable range. But Ling Shiqi thought about it again. If this was the only restriction, then the difference between this place and the Earth area was too big. So he asked Delta Origi, apart from this green-robed man, did you encounter any other dangers? Delta Origi shook her head and said, no, I bumped into him not long after I arrived. We fought without saying anything, and then you suddenly appeared. Ling Shiqi's appearance was also bizarre, but Delta Origi didn't ask too much. Because she knew that Ling Shiqi had too many secrets and was full of all kinds of inconceivable things, so no matter what shocking actions Ling Shiqi did, she would feel that it was normal. The reason why this place is called the Minor 5 Elements Chaos Paradise is that it is divided into 5 different areas according to the 5 elements. In the middle of them, there is a very mysterious place. Let's call it the Chaos Area. When I entered this paradise, I appeared in the Earth area. That place is full of terrifying gravity. Even if I use all my strength, I can barely move. It can be said that it is very dangerous. And this place doesn't seem to be too dangerous, but it is a bit unreasonable. Ling Shiqi said what he knew, what he experienced, and what he guessed. Delta Origi fell into deep thought. According to Ling Shiqi, this place was indeed a bit too peaceful. Let's not think about this for now. Bu Yangxiu is also in the wood area. Let's meet up with him first. The more people there are, the easier it will be to deal with the danger. Before Ling Shiqi prepared to teleport, he also memorized the area where everyone was and their approximate location. There were only 5 or 6 people in each area, and they all encountered various threats. For example, the temperature in the fire region was extremely high, and there were monsters similar to flame spirits inside. The water region was a world of ice and snow, and many snow giants were chasing after the spirit cultivator. The air of the metal region was filled with needle-like, formless radiance. There were also groups of golden armored guards in formation. As for the chaotic region, even the system map would not be able to detect it. While the two of them swallowed the pills, they carefully rushed towards Buyangxiu's direction. Along the way, it was very peaceful and they didn't encounter any monsters. However, when they arrived, they didn't see Buyangxiu. There wasn't even anyone in Byakugan's field of vision. Leng Shiqi wasn't too surprised. After all, it had been quite some time since he used fate. Buyangxiu might have moved to another location. Just then, Delta Origi made a sound of surprise. What's wrong? Leng Shiqi turned to look at Delta Origi and found that her face was very strange. Delta Origi first closed her eyes, as if she was sensing something. After a few breaths, she suddenly opened her eyes, and her eyes were filled with astonishment. She anxiously said, "There's something wrong with my spirit energy. Quick, check your spiritual energy." When Leng Shiqi saw Delta Origi's appearance, he knew that she must have discovered something big. He hurriedly looked inside and quickly found the problem. That was, his spirit energy had decreased. This wasn't a decrease after he used his spirit technique, but a permanent decrease. Logically speaking, after using a spirit technique, the spirit energy in his body would definitely be consumed. However, as long as he spent some time, the spirit energy would naturally be replenished. But now, Leng Shiqi found that the upper limit of his spirit energy had decreased. In other words, his cultivation was regressing. I understand. Leng Shiqi said in a deep voice, our spirit energy is not slowly decreasing, but disappearing forever. At first, Leng Shiqi did not pay too much attention to the spirit energy in his body. Although he was a little strange that the recovery speed of his spirit energy was slower than before, he did not think too much about it. Now, it seemed that although there was no great danger in the wood region, the hidden danger was more terrifying than the earth region. Spirit energy was the foundation of a spirit cultivator. As the saying goes, the path of spirit cultivation was like sailing against the current. Now, Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi's spirit energy cultivation was gradually decreasing. This was a little difficult for the two who pursued power to accept. At the same time, they thought that they had to leave this region first. Leng Shiqi immediately opened the system map. He compared it with the distance he had traveled. The wood region should be about 100 miles in radius. There were two regions closest to them. One was the metal region, and the other was the mysterious chaos region. Soon, Leng Shiqi made a decision to go to the chaos region. This minor 5 elements chaos grotto heaven was clearly centered around the chaos region. Perhaps their final test would be in the chaos region. Of course, there might be greater danger in there, but Leng Shiqi really could not bear the feeling of his spirit energy being drained for no reason. He chose a direction and led Delta Origi straight to the chaos region. With their speed, it would only take half a day to reach the chaos region. In this dense forest, 2 exceptionally nimble figures constantly flitted past. But suddenly, Leng Shiqi's body paused. Delta Origi suddenly stopped and turned her head in confusion. Leng Shiqi's face was gloomy, and there was even a trace of disbelief on his face. Delta Origi rarely saw Leng Shiqi with such an expression. She subconsciously asked, "What did you notice?" Sigh. Leng Shiqi sighed deeply. This wood region is far more complicated than we thought. The reason why he sighed was because when he opened the map to see how far they were, he was shocked to find that they had actually gone astray. At this time, they should have almost reached the intersection of the two regions, but now they were actually back to the center of the wood region. When Leng Shiqi said this, Delta Origi was also shocked. This kind of thing had happened before on Blood Mist Island, but at that time, they had only just entered the spirit transformation realm and were confused by the fog. Now, the two of them were both in the spirit aperture realm. Leng Shiqi's spiritual power was enormous, and his perception was far beyond that of spirit cultivators of the same level. He also had the Byakugan and the system map in his hands. How could they have unknowingly gone astray? How was this possible? Chapter 460. Ling Shiqi quickly calmed himself down. He thought about it carefully and realized that there was actually a way to deal with this predicament. As long as he kept Byakugan and the system map open, he could still leave this place after finding the right direction. At this moment, he finally understood that the danger of the wood region did not lie in the monsters, but in the fact that they would trap you here and slowly drain your spiritual energy. If you stayed here for too long without leaving, your cultivation realm would drop again and again. At that time, even if you were lucky enough to leave, you would not have enough strength to face other dangers. It could be said that the wood region was a soft knife. Now, it seemed that when they went to find Buyangxiu, it was not that he had gone far, but that they had already deviated from their original direction. Then what should we do now? Delta Origi asked. Ling Shiqi calmed himself down and said, "Don't worry, I have a way. I was a bit careless before." After saying that, Ling Shiqi directly opened Byakugan, and everything within a radius of 12 miles was within his field of vision. At the same time, he kept opening the system map to correct his direction. "Let's go." The two of them started to walk again, but this time, their path was very strange in the eyes of others. They would change their direction every once in a while, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right, and sometimes even to the back. But in reality, they were indeed slowly approaching the chaos region. Ling Shiqi looked at the mark on the system map and his heart completely calmed down. At first, when he first entered the minor chaos paradise and found out that the system map could be used, he was actually a bit happy. This was equivalent to activating a full map hack. It made him feel like he had everything under control, but it was this mentality that caused him to suffer a little. If he was more cautious and careful, he should have already reached the chaos region. Now, he had wasted so much time for nothing and lost a portion of his spiritual energy for nothing. This was the price he had to pay. While Ling Shiqi was running, he could not help but look at Delta Origi. Delta Origi's cultivation was only at the first level of the spirit aperture realm. If they stayed here for too long, their cultivation might drop. If his carelessness caused the Delta Origi to fall, he would not know how to face the Delta Origi. However, the Delta Origi didn't notice Ling Shiqi's gaze because they could already see layers of gray fog in their field of vision. That was the primal chaos region. When the two of them got closer, they immediately felt an indescribable aura from the gray fog. It gave them an ominous feeling. Ling Shiqi and Delta Origi looked at each other, their eyes filled with determination. This area is the center of this mini paradise. There must be quite a bit of danger inside. We must be extra careful. As Ling Shiqi spoke, he donned his demonic beast blood rune armor and gripped his inky jade sword. He was ready to fight at any moment. Delta Origi also took a deep breath. Her ink-black hair instantly turned gray, and her entire body gave off a dangerous feeling. Immediately, the two of them walked into the gray fog together. The surrounding scenery suddenly changed, but the scene in front of Ling Shiqi was a little unexpected. He thought that the gray fog was so ominous that there must be some demons and ghosts inside. Who would have thought that what appeared in front of him at this time was a lush green valley? All kinds of flowers were in full bloom, and the breeze carried bursts of floral fragrance. It was like a paradise. Only the gray fog floating in the sky made people feel a little depressed. What was even more amazing was that the spiritual energy here was abnormally rich. Moreover, it was not the normal spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It did not seem to contain any strange attributes, but the purest spiritual energy that was close to the origin. No matter what attribute you cultivated, you could cultivate to your heart's content here. Ling Shiqi could not help but blink, afraid that he was mistaken. This place clearly looked like a paradise. He muttered, "The primal chaos region is actually like this? What do you think, Delta Origi?" However, he did not hear Delta Origi's voice. Ling Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly turned around, but there was no one beside him. Ling Shiqi gripped the inky jade sword tightly, fully activating his Byakugan and perception. However, to his surprise, his Byakugan could only detect the situation within 1 mile. As for his perception, it could barely leave his body. The primal chaos region can actually greatly suppress perception and detection. Ling Shiqi was secretly shocked. But even so, Delta Origi can't move 1 mile away in an instant. That gray fog is very strange. Ling Shiqi could not help but frown. He had just found Delta Origi, and not long after, they were separated again. Delta Origi was still injured, and her cultivation was not high. He was more or less a little worried. However, on second thought, Delta Origi was able to come out of Blood Mist Island and Blood Prison. This proved her strength and ability. Moreover, Delta Origi was the disciple of Bone Demon. She must have some trump cards in her hands. She should not be in danger for the time being. Ling Shiqi looked left and right, found a small path, and walked along it. He was vigilant at all times, and after about an hour, he actually saw a small village in the distance. The village was not big, but it was still crisscrossed with traffic. Smoke rose in spirals, and from time to time, he could hear a few children's laughter. There was a village in this place? There were still living people in this place? Ling Shiqi subconsciously felt that something was wrong. He was very careful as he approached the village. Just as he walked to the entrance of the village, he heard a burst of wind blowing from inside. Then, a funeral procession came out. At the front, there was a middle-aged man with a pale face wearing mourning clothes. He held a white banner, expressionless. Behind him, 2 people walked and scattered paper money. Behind him, there were 4 people carrying a heavy coffin. There were dozens of people following behind them, all of them crying and wailing. However, there were also a few children in colorful clothes who were laughing at the back of the procession. They seemed a little out of place. Ling Shiqi's greenish-white eyes kept flashing with spiritual light. There seemed to be nothing wrong with this group of mourners. Everyone here was made of flesh and blood, and they were all living beings. In other words, these people were all real people. Ling Shiqi watched coldly as the procession walked past him. He did not expect that the last old man to notice him. The old man walked over and showed Ling Shiqi a kind smile. "Guest, you must have come from afar. Why don't you come into the village and rest for a while?" Ling Shiqi sensed again. The old man in front of him did not have any abnormalities. He was a very ordinary person. He put on a harmless smile and said, "I've traveled for a long time, and I'm tired. I'll have to trouble you then." Chapter 461. The old man brought Ling Shiqi into the village. Ling Shiqi looked around as he walked. The entire village seemed very peaceful. The villagers in the village were also more hospitable. When they saw Ling Shiqi, they would smile warmly. However, Ling Shiqi always felt strange because these people's smiles were full of hypocrisy. The old man brought Ling Shiqi to a black canopy that had been set up. Inside the canopy, there were round tables that were more than 100 feet long. Every table was filled with people who were eating and drinking heartily. The old man said, "Guest, what a coincidence. There is a wedding banquet today. Guest, if you are weak, please take a seat." Wedding banquet? Ling Shiqi glanced at the old man. This was clearly a funeral banquet. When did it become a wedding banquet? Leaving the sea of suffering and ascending to paradise, isn't this a wedding banquet? The old man explained. "Old man, you are right." Ling Shiqi nodded, but he did not take a seat. Because in his perception, these people were not eating delicious food. They were clearly eating rotten maggots. The wine they were drinking also exuded a strong smell of corpses. Ling Shiqi naturally could not eat or drink these things. At this time, the burly man next to him handed over a bowl of wine. "Guest, this is the strongest wine in our village. Come and try it." Before the burly man finished speaking, he poured the bowl of wine directly into Ling Shiqi's mouth. Ling Shiqi snorted coldly, and an invisible spiritual force spread out and pushed the burly man away. However, the strange thing was that Ling Shiqi had clearly controlled this spiritual force to a very weak level, but the burly man directly scattered like a paper man. But this burly man's corpse did not bleed at all. The burly man's head that had fallen to the ground still had a smile on it. "Guest, what do you mean by this? Are you refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit?" At the same time, everyone in the black tent quieted down. Everyone turned to look at Ling Shiqi with a smile. That kind of smile made people shudder. The old man squinted and said, "We are treating the guest well, but the guest wants to kill. This is your fault." Everyone who was originally sitting came over with a bowl of wine. They still had a warm smile and said, "Guest, come and drink. Drink a bowl. Don't be shy." Like a demon's voice that lingered in Ling Shiqi's ears directly penetrated into his heart, making his state of mind unconsciously had a trace of extreme irritation. "Humph." Ling Shiqi snorted and said, trying to be mysterious. Immediately, the spiritual force around his body erupted like an invisible vortex swept out. In an instant, the entire black canopy was sent flying, and everyone around it was torn apart. What was even stranger was that this time, all of them looked just like real people. Blood splattered everywhere, broken limbs flew everywhere, and some scarlet blood even splashed onto Ling Shiqi's face. The feeling of blood was so real, it was as if he had killed hundreds of innocent lives in an instant. Ling Shiqi wiped the blood off his face in a daze. An indescribable emotion emerged in his heart. In fact, to this day, there were many people who died at the hands of Ling Shiqi, but all the people he killed were spirit cultivators, and they were all killed for the sake of survival, for the sake of benefits. He had never killed an ordinary person. He had always treated killing as a method, not a bloodthirsty person. Now, the scene in front of him was like hell on earth, but it felt so real that it actually aroused the killing intent in his heart. Just as everyone in the vicinity was dead, Ling Shiqi only felt a blur in front of his eyes. He was actually standing at the entrance of the village again. There was a funeral team coming out. The leader was still the expressionless middle-aged man, and at the end of the team was still the kind-looking old man. What was going on? At this moment, Ling Shiqi did not know why he had returned here, nor did he know how to recover. He also did not know how the old man was resurrected. Although he knew that all of this should be fake and was very likely an illusion, his eyes and feelings told him that all of this was real. The old man walked towards Ling Shiqi and said, "Guest, you must have come from afar. Why don't you come into the village and rest for a while?" Everything was exactly the same as what Ling Shiqi had experienced before, even the old man's words were exactly the same. What the hell is going on? Ling Shiqi suddenly felt extremely annoyed. He used his finger as a sword and instantly released hundreds of triple extinction sword chi that covered the entire village. The icy blue triple extinction sword chi swept everywhere, constantly strangling everyone here. In just a dozen breaths of time, the entire village had become a dead village. What Ling Shiqi did not know was that his eyes had begun to turn slightly red. However, in the next moment, the village was restored again, and a group of people rushed out of the village. Ling Shiqi's killing intent surged, and his eyes flashed with a bloody light. Suddenly, he formed the grasping flower seal, and a faint Buddhist light appeared, suppressing the killing intent in his heart. Phew! Ling Shiqi let out a heavy breath. He had just killed all the villagers in the village, and they were all ordinary people, who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. Although he knew that these were not ordinary people, the feeling was extremely real. It almost made him addicted to endless killing and become a madman who only knew how to kill. Fortunately, his willpower was strong, and he had the grasping flower seal, a Buddhist secret technique that specialized in suppressing evil thoughts, so he woke up just as he was about to become a demon. He could not help but think to himself, this is really something. In this chaotic area, his eyes and the power of perception could no longer be trusted. Instead, they had become a channel for him to fall into a predicament. Then, Ling Shiqi simply closed his Byakugan and withdrew all his perception. At this time, the old man came over again and said the same thing. This time, Ling Shiqi also smiled and said, "Okay, this junior has been traveling for a long time and is really tired. If it is convenient, this junior would like to stay here for a night." The smile on the old man's face froze for a moment. Then, he brought Leng Shiqi into the black shelter. The burly man once again handed over a bowl of smelly wine. This time, Leng Shiqi did not attack. Instead, he drank the bowl of wine very generously. The disgusting smell immediately filled his mouth and nose, making him feel nauseous. However, Leng Shiqi's expression did not change. Instead, he praised, "Good wine, good wine." Another bowl. The smiles on the old man and the burly man's faces stiffened for a moment, but they immediately returned to normal. The burly man directly picked up a jar of wine and shouted, "Our guest is really straightforward. Today, we must drink this jar of wine. Come, 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 let's get drunk." Leng Shiqi rolled up his sleeves and started eating and drinking with the table full of people. He smiled as he swallowed the rotten food and corpse water into his stomach. After a while, a little boy about 4 or 5 years old wearing a red duda came bouncing over. A glint flashed across Leng Shiqi's eyes as he thought to himself, "Finally. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."